Hello and welcome everyone to On The Esky, sports podcast where we wrap up all the major sporting news stories from around the world that we like to follow. As always, I've got the two boys back with me, Peps and Monks. My name is Sean. We've got a massive show planned for, as we do every week, because there's a huge week of sports in between. It covers in 7 days. Of course, we need to start off with the IPL and talk about the final that's coming up between the Super Kings and the Knight Riders. Plus, we'll talk about the other finals and how we got to this point. There's a little bit of news happening in the AFL with trades and then the NRL with expansion. There's a massive week 6 preview of the NFL coming up. Plus, I think we've got to talk about Gruden. Huge heavyweight title fight over the weekend, an excellent spectacle. And then plus a whole bunch of other things, soccer, NBA, MLB's kicking off. There's F1 happening, UFC as well. As always, we have timestamps, so you can jump ahead to the sports you are interested in as we run through. And of course, if you enjoy this content or enjoy what we're doing, give us a subscribe, comment on our socials, or comment on this, give us a like. It all helps out. As you're probably aware, we're just finishing up lockdown. We've got a couple of weeks to go, and then we'll have these, the mustache maestro with the dark beard and the ginger beard get together in the studio for the first time in quite a while. We'll get them all back here around the table and get stuck into sports, but it is still a couple of weeks away. But with that, that's the intro. Let's start off with shout a beer. Monks, I'm going to throw to you first. Who's shouting a beer out this week?
Yep. I'm going to shout a beer to J.R. Smith, 16-year vet of the NBA, 2-time champion, one with the Cavaliers and one with the Lakers. He's gone and done the Billy Madison. So back in August this year, he went back to college, back to North Carolina A&T Aggies, and became a walk-on for their golf team. The reason I guess I'm shouting a beer this week is he had his first golf tournament with the Aggies, and somewhere around, I think it was in his second round, he got attacked by a group of Waspville Hornets. He stepped on the Hornets nest and in the middle of the fairway, and got stung, had to get some medical attention. He was playing all right up until that point, and then I guess he sort of slid down the rankings a little bit and actually ended up 81st place out of 84. But I'm shouting a beer this week for his first golf tournament as a college freshman.
A lot of noise around it, obviously. You do feel for some of the young golfers that may actually have a future in the sport. But having said that, his swing's actually pretty good. This is no Charles Barkley taking the golfing world. He strikes the ball very pure. My only concern is that he won't be able to rely on LeBron James to win him golf tournaments as per that Cleveland Cavaliers rig. But shout out to J.R. Smith. Yeah. Always impressive when guys can play 2 sports at an elite level. And I can't bag him at all, considering my golf game. So, wishing him all the best as an actor.
Yeah, well, at 36 as well, he's probably got another 30 years in golf. So potentially a lot of time to improve on his current handicap. So see how far he goes.
Well, it's interesting.
You go.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting he's gone down the college route. So he's going to college. He's aiming for a degree in liberal arts, I think it was. So I don't know what that gets you, but rather than going around playing, I guess, the Pro-Am tournament, pairing up with actual pros, he's going to try and become a pro himself.
I think liberal arts used to be about as useful as a sheet of toilet paper, but given the current world that we live in, I think liberal arts and the woke ideology that's coming through, you're pretty much you may as well be a professor once you get that bit of paper.
Oh, let's not go down that road.
And we shan't go any further down that road. Sean,
wait till we get to the NFL.
Yeah, true that. Sean, who would you like to shout a beer this week?
Well, a bit of a prelim to that, and you guys are probably aware how emails work. They're usually conversational and they go back and forth. So for Bruce Allen, I'm going to shout him a beer, getting off scot-free in this whole debacle, that he's caught no cases. maybe because he's no longer in the NFL currently. Let's say semi-retired. I don't think anyone's looking to pick him up currently, and I don't think they're going to after any of this stuff for his counterpart on the other end of the receiving emails or sending him emails. Just lost his job, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the NFL. But I thought it was interesting. He off scot-free, and I think we'll talk a bit more about conspiracies when we get into the NFL and talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, it is interesting that you mentioned that emails are normally a two-way street. Although I'd imagine there's a lot of blokes listening to the podcast tonight that have slid into a few DMs, and it is just one-way traffic. So possibly that was the interaction between John Gruden and Bruce Allen. But yeah, we'll get stuck into Gruden a little bit later. But yeah, shout out to Bruce Allen. He's managed to let this one go through to the keeper and get away scot-free.
What about you, Babby?
Mate, I'm going to shout out our Delhi Capitals. Just heartbreaker after heartbreaker. They've lost their last 3 games. One of them was a dead rubber, of course, against RCB. We'll talk about that in a second. But then they've finished first in the IPL, and they've gone bang, bang, out in straight sets, and they won't be able to contend for that elusive IPL championship. But that will lead us into the week that was in the IPL. We've seen an unbelievable run from Kolkata Knight Riders. I think when they finished up in India, they had 2 wins under the belt before the tournament got postponed. They were in 7th place, and lo and behold, they'll be playing for an IPL title tomorrow night. They'll go up against the Chennai Super Kings. It'll be 2nd versus 4th. We will preview that in just a minute. But let's cast our minds back to last week. Kolkata weren't even assured of a place in the playoffs, let alone going to the final when we spoke last week. They had to beat Rajasthan Royals, and they did so convincingly, smashing them by 86 runs. Shubman Gill, 56, the best of the bats there. And Shiva Mavi, keep an eye on him, 4 for 21 for the young quick. And something that was a little bit of an oversight for us last week, we said Mumbai couldn't make it. There was a chance. It was a very, very slim chance. They needed to win by just a measly 170 runs or so to overtake Kolkata on net run rate. They had to bat first. That was the only way that it could have happened. They won the toss, and everyone just got a license to go mad, and then they did. Ishan Kishan, 84 of 32. That is striking the ball at 262. And Surya Kumar Yadav, 82 of 40, striking at 205. They made a whopping 235, which actually set up the opportunity, albeit a very slim one, to try and sneak past Kolkata into the top 4. Unfortunately for the Indians, the opposition was able to make a total that far exceeded the net run rate that they would have needed. So it's very interesting that the 5-time champions, Mumbai Indians, they obviously missed out on the playoffs, and it's only the 2nd time they've missed out since 2009. 5-time champions, absolute juggernauts, and were highly favoured going into the tournament. Boys, what do we make of that?
Yeah, just want to go back to your point on the Knight Riders. They won, since the restart, 7 of 9, and have won 4 straight as well going into the final. So they're on a bit of a roll, as you mentioned. But the Mumbai Indians, I think, don't want to say it's great for the IPL, but hey, you've got someone else. You got the 4 other teams making it into the playoffs. You don't have the usual regulars. I don't want to call them the Melbourne Storm of IPL because no one else will get that reference by Australians.
I'm sure none of our Indian listeners will pick up on that one, but Aussie listeners will surely understand.
But, you know, a team that's been there, they're always there. They're the team everyone loves to hate or hates, doesn't love. But the sick of the Mumbai Indians being in there. They want someone else to win the comp. We, of course, were hoping it was going to be the Capitals, but you know that hasn't happened. But maybe, hey, get on the Knight Riders and sneak from 4th to win would be pretty impressive.
It's actually kind of impressive that they were able to get such a high score there as well, because a lot of the matches have been pretty low. Do you reckon that leads on to, I suppose, next year changing the way they look at matches and I guess how aggressive they are with attacking?
Oh, apples and oranges here. I think maybe against a better bowling lineup and guys that have got something to play for, it might be a different story. And also, there's been market differences between the deck at Sharjah and the decks at Dubai and Abu Dhabi. For some reason, Sharjah is just full of landmines and no one can really bat on it. And the other two decks seem to be pretty good. But yeah, it's an interesting one with the juggernaut that is the Indians missing out. Alas, let's go back to those Delhi Capitals. Obviously, we've sort of all become de facto fans of them. Their social media team reaching out to us, a small podcast just in our beginnings. So we're obviously very fond of them. They played the Chennai Super Kings in the qualifier one, winner straight through to the final, so essentially a semi-final. Delhi batted first and made 5 for 172. Prithvi Shaw 60 and Rishabh Pant 51. Then a peculiar decision for Akshar Patel to bat 4. He sort of struggled. I think he had about 10 off 11. And it was good to see Josh Hazlewood in action for the Super Kings for us Aussie fans. He had 2 for 29 off his 4 overs. Now, boys, let's enter the breakout player of the tournament, Ruturaj Gaikwad. He had another great game. He made 70 off 50, and it was that man, Akshar, who failed to impress with the bat, who actually had a very impressive catch to dismiss him. He's the second highest run scorer in the competition and will play in the final tomorrow night. Has a chance to overtake KL Rahul to have the most runs in the tournament. And our mate, Lord Shardul Thakur, he got promoted up the order. The boys had obviously seen what he was able to do against the English bowling lineup in the recent Test series, and he got a golden quacker. So obviously he needed a few more English boys to slap around the park. It was old head, actually, Robin Udhapa, 63 of 44, that were getting CSK really close. And then this one really went down to the wire. Enter MS Dhoni, 40 years old, hero in India, probably let's say third only in names to guys like Kohli and Tendulkar in Indian cricket folklore / religion. And he had a very ordinary tournament so far, and he just goes, oh, hang on, time machine, let's enter 2012 MS Dhoni, 18 of 6 to get them home. He slapped around Tom Curran, who was a little bit of a speculator, that one. Kasigo Rabada had an over in hand there, and that got the Super Kings straight through to the final, and it meant that the Capitals had to go the long way through Royal Challengers Bangalore. So quite disappointing, I guess, for the Capitals to go to this knockout game. Did you boys have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, and go back to your Patel point a little bit. I'd be interested to see maybe what Ricky's thinking was a little bit in this as well. Of course, we'll show some Australian bias here and say, well, why is like Steve Smith not batting?
He wasn't picked in this
exactly.
one.
And that team, looking at the team that they picked, was a bit bowler heavy, and Patel's kind of the ended up being the all-rounder in that sense here, but maybe not really. I wouldn't consider him a super, as a specialist all-rounder. He's a spin bowler that can throw the bat around a little bit. So I wonder if they went a little bit light on bats for this pitch, and maybe that hurt him. I'd be interested to, we'd have to pick Ricky's brain to get an understanding of what the kind of thoughts there. But just doing a quick double check of that, and like you said before, Rabana not getting that last over. Again, another question mark you got to, because he was really good in their game last night where they lost as well. He had a great economy and got 2 wickets. So, interesting.
It's fitting, and it really encapsulates this podcast. 3 beer enthusiasts that have never gone past about 3rd grade in cricket, questioning the mind of one of the greatest cricketers ever in Ricky Ponting. But it did seem a little bit peculiar. A few of those coaching / captain's decisions as well. Rishabh Pant would have been involved in some of, especially giving the ball to Tom Curran. But Akshar Patel batting 4 when you've got Pant and Shimron Hetmeyer, one of the cleanest strikers of the ball in the world. Quite peculiar and a head scratcher for Delhi Capitals fans.
What happened in the Eliminator?
So Eliminator, after 50-something games of IPL cricket in a extended season because of COVID, we had the first elimination game a few nights ago, that between Royal Challengers Bangalore and the hot streak Kolkata Knight Riders in Sharjah. We did mention that Sharjah is a different venue. Virat Kohli had a 39 and Devdutt Padikkal 21. Got Bangalore off to a reasonable start. But this deck, in combination with this man, Sunil Narine, he had 4 for 21. And 4 for 21 doesn't matter who you're getting out. If you're getting park cricketers out and you finish up with 4 for 21, that's impressive. When your victim list is Kohli, Bharat, De Villiers, and Maxwell, that's just about, well, 3 obviously world-class superstars, and Bharat has shown a little bit in the IPL here. Sunil Narine, one of the form bowlers in the competition. Glenn Maxwell, he only managed 15. It was actually his first score of less than 40 in 6 games. He had played the spinners very well. He had the most sixes hit off spin bowling in this tournament by a long way, but Narine got him undone there. He was actually on social media. There was a lot of carry on, I think, in the comments, as there always is. Bangalore are chokers. They can't go far. You know, they've got all the talent. Virat Kohli's never captained them to an IPL win. And he posted something out there to all the trolls. And essentially the sentiment was, be nice to people. It's not that hard. And given the current world that we live in, you know, your team not making the finals probably pretty low on the priority list, I would have thought. So good on you, Glenn Maxwell. We obviously love you as Aussies, and we've got big expectations for him going into the World Cup because his shoulders will really need to get some work carrying our Australian team. Anyways, they made 138. I think that's about a par score there at Sharjah. We saw another great run chase and a team effort from the Knight Riders. Shubman Gill, Venkatesh Iyer, Nitish Rana, and that man Sunil Narine, he can bat a bit as well, all had 20 plus. And Dan Christian, the Aussie, he got the ball for RCB in the last over, but it was Shakib Al Hassan who hit the winning runs out there. And the Knight Riders go through, and I suppose a disappointing finish to the year for RCB, who on paper are arguably the best side in the IPL. Boys, what were our thoughts there? Bangalore bowing out in the first eliminator.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with everyone going after Kohli yet again. Like, what has Kohli not done? Not what is he doing?
Yeah.
You know, he's still up there as one of the most quality bats, and he's still putting up runs. He just hasn't, you know. Well, they didn't get the win in England because of other circumstances. Who cares about that? That'll have to sort itself out at some point. But yeah, not winning it here with a very stacked roster. You know, that happens. Nobody will come back next year. They've just come running into a team. The Knight Riders had a excellent run of form, and I was just having a look at their team list as well. People forget that Paddy Cummins is meant to be in this team, but of course didn't travel because he's here at the moment getting ready for Ashes. So
just had a baby. Shout out to Mrs. Cummins. Just had a baby boy this week. Albie, I believe, courtesy of my wife on the info there. But yeah, always the big names are going to cop it, aren't they? Virat actually made the most runs in this game. I don't know what more he's meant to do in this particular game. And of course, it's always going to be a beat up, isn't it? The Indian media is, you know, likes to sacrifice their own, just like the Australian media likes to do. And there was a guy by the name of AB de Villiers, one of the best T20 bats of all time, who really failed to contribute the whole tournament. Again, not up to speed with the South African media, but can't imagine he was facing the same kind of scrutiny that guys like Kohli and Maxwell were. But I suppose a disappointing season on the whole for Bangalore, who were really touted to go far.
Yeah, I think they started off very slow as well, didn't they? They were kind of, you know, 500, just middle of the pack, and did enough to get into the playoffs. But yeah, they should have been better. You'd think more dominant.
Yeah. Let's move forward into the second qualifier, which becomes eliminated 2, if you will. That being between Delhi Capitals and the red-hot Kolkata Knight Riders. This was a really awesome game. This was last night. I was scheduled to be on the watch party, but unfortunately a bit of life got in the way, boys. I'm sure everyone can relate to that. The big news for Australian fans was Marcus Stoinis into the side in place for Tom Curran. He got that last over and he got sacrificed. Unfortunately, the poor bloke, to make way for the big Stoin. And the Capitals actually got off to a pretty good start here. Prithvi Shaw was looking his normal best until he copped a nice googly from Varun Chakravarthi to go for 18. That saw big Marcus Stoinis come in at 3. And to be honest, he didn't look like himself at all, boys. He looks like he's still, this hamstring injury is still playing some kind of influence in the way that he could open up and strike the ball. He had just a lackluster 18 of 23. Shikhar Dhawan and Shreyas Iyer had 30-odd each, but they just got to 5 for 135. Surprisingly, that man Sunil Narine didn't take a wicket. I think he had 3 man of the match performances leading into this game. Still bowled very tidily. And the leggy Varun Chakravarthi, 2 for 26. The best of the bowlers for the Knight Riders. And then this looked like it was sealed, stamped, delivered after about 10 overs, with Shubman Gill and Venkatesh Iyer getting KKR off to an excellent start. They looked like they were going to cruise to victory. They needed 13 runs off the last 4 overs with wickets in hand. Boys, this was one of the most entertaining finishes you'll ever see in T20 cricket. After Shubman Gill snicked up, I think they lost 6 for 7, including the Gill wicket, and they had 4 consecutive ducks. 4. Dinesh Karthik bowled by Rabada. Owen Morgan chopped off Nordica. A little bit unlucky. They needed just 7 off the last over from Ravi Ashwin. Shakib Al Hassan, plum LBW, and then Sunil Narine came to 6 runs required off 2 balls. All the momentum going in the favour of our Delhi Capitals. And then, lo and behold, Rahul Tripathi, doesn't matter, all his partners have fallen like flies around him. He's facing a hat-trick ball from Ravi Ashwin, and he launches in for 6 to absolutely break the hearts of the Delhi Capitals fans. And we would have seen jubilation in Kolkata. The Knight Riders, an unbelievable run to being 7th place at the midway point of the year when the tournament got postponed into the final. Heartbreak for Delhi Capitals fans. Boys, what did we make of that?
I think you couldn't sum it up any better, Peps. Absolute roller coaster of a game, definitely towards the end. That's why you live for that T20 format, that chase right there goes down to the dying balls, the dying overs. And yeah, hitting a hat-trick ball for 6 to get you guys the win. You can't really top that. That's pretty impressive. Yeah,
shout out to Tripathi. Maybe went under the radar for Shout a Beer this week. That is cojones of steel. We'll go out there, facing the hat-trick ball, 6 off 2 required, and go, don't worry about the next ball. Let's settle this right now. So yeah, Delhi, they were so close but so far in both these elimination games. And look, we've been treated to some really good elimination cricket. So if the final's anything to go, or if these playoffs are any indication of as the final might go, we were in for a real treat. That said, let's have a look at it. Tomorrow night, our time, it's quite late. I think it's 1 a.m. Saturday morning for us down here, down under. That'll be prime time in India, and early afternoon in the Emirates. The second place, Chennai Super Kings take on the 4th place, Kolkata Knight Riders. Will it be the long-time powerhouse and 3-time champs in the Super Kings? They're very good with the bat. They've got that young superstar, the breakout player of the tournament in Ruturaj Gaikwad, to go along with some really good seasoned old heads in Faf du Plessis, Ambati Rayudu, and a really strong middle order with the likes of Moeen Ali, MS Dhoni, and Jadu Ravi Jadeja. And then we spoke before at length about how good Sunil Narine's been. He forms an excellent spin combination with Varun Chakravarthi and Shakib Al Hassan. The Knight Riders have won the comp twice. They've got all the momentum. How do we see this playing out? Monks, if you wouldn't mind just bringing up the odds. And Sean, can I get your thoughts while he does that?
It's hard to say because when the Super Kings haven't played for a week. And
5 days, I think.
5 days, yeah. And in that time frame, the Knight Riders have played an extra 2 games. So So
both elimination wins.
Yeah, exactly. So they're momentum, form, etc. You could throw out that, or maybe they've played their final 1 week early, whatever. You can put all the sports psychology in there if you want. but when it comes down to it, it's a coin toss for me. And at this point, let's back the Knight Riders. That's where I'm going. Let's follow them in from the unreal form, the way they've been playing. I'm going to ride the momentum, ride that wave, and they'll come out here and shock the Super Kings. That's what I'm thinking.
I like that. A true Cinderella story, back in the team that's come from nowhere with a bit of momentum. I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go the Super Kings to put an end to the Cinderella story. I just think their batting stocks are too strong, and that middle order with those old heads are too good. But again, like you say, flip of a coin. I like that analogy. It's a game of cricket, and cricket can, out of any sport really, is one of those ones that can go either way. This one away from Sharjah, so I think that gives a little bit of advantage more to the team with the stronger bats. Had this final been in Sharjah, and we've seen what Nareen and co have done there, maybe this would swing me towards the Knight Riders. But I'm going to go the Chennai Super Kings to win their 4th IPL tournament. Monks, you've got the casting vote here, and the odds, I imagine they're pretty close. Let us know what you got.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, yeah, Sean summed it up perfectly. It is a coin flip. Yeah, so $1.90 each way. Oh, yeah, Super Kings and Riders. I like Sean's sentiment. I've gone Knight Riders. I think they've got a bit of momentum behind them. Hopefully that works in their favour. That being said, Garquard is favourite to be top run scorer at $3.30. Is just pipping Gill at $3.40 for the Knight Riders. Yeah, outside of that, everything looks very, very even.
Let's look. We don't really have a dog in the fight, aside from our pride with those tips. Let's just hope for a nice, entertaining final, as we've seen in these playoff games, hey?
Yeah, definitely.
That's it, yeah.
And with that IPL finishing up, so that's Friday night, Saturday our time. Sunday night our time is the start of the T20 World Cup. The first game happens. So
roll straight into it. How good! So we'll get to talk about the start of the World Cup. Australia, I think we have South Africa first, off the top of my head.
We're the 23rd, our first game. First game of the World Cup's on the 17th. So I think it's more the lower tier nations play the early games for the first week, and then the bigger tier start to roll in. So
that's right. So it's a 10-team tournament. So there's 8 teams playing for those last 2 spots. Your Scotlands, Irelands, little minnow countries like Sri Lanka have to try and get through that, and then the tournament proper starting a little bit after that. But in next week's episode, we'll be able to review the IPL final. We'll take a look at the stats, who finished up as a top run scorer, top wicket taker, etc., and also be able to have a look at the start of the World Cup. It's all happening in the cricket. And speaking of, we've got an Ashes team. Monks, do you want to let us?
Ashes team.
England's Ashes squad. A lot of hoopla last week around about will they even come? Of course they will, but there was some hoops that had to be jumped through, if you will. And 2 notable omissions: no Jofra Archer, no Ben Stokes. This team, to me, looks very susceptible, especially what we saw India be able to do to them on their home wicket. Monks, if you wouldn't mind running through that squad, please.
Yep, yeah, I'll just run through them as we've got them listed out here. So starting at the top of the list, we've got Joe Root, Jimmy Anderson, Johnny Bairstow, Dom Bess, Stuart Broad, Rory Burns, Joss Butler, Zach Crawley, Hasib Hamid, Dan Lawrence, Jack Leach, David Milan, Craig Overton, Ollie Pope, Ollie Robinson, Chris Wokes, and Mark Wood.
Who's their other spin option besides Lynch in that team? Because there's no Moeen Ali, of course.
Yeah, no Moeen Ali is interesting. Can you double check that? Is Ali coming out, or did I miss something there? I would have thought he was coming out. Dom Bess, isn't it?
Yes. Well, they wouldn't bring a third spinner. That's what I was trying to work out.
No. And to be honest, that pace attack, even without Archer, still pretty solid. The thing is, I suppose you could if you wanted to get into the nitty-gritty, is Jimmy Anderson's record in Australia is pretty ordinary. The conditions obviously here don't suit the English seamers as they do over there with the Duke's ball and the overcast weather. Joe Root is having a worldly year, one of the best calendar years ever for a bat. Outside of his batting prowess, this English team looks susceptible to mine. We've seen a little bit of back and forth already. The Barmy Army getting stuck into Tim Payne. They're saying he's a fake leader. We've had powerhouse leaders in the past in Steve Waugh and Ricky Ponting and Michael Clark, and Tim Payne just doesn't quite fill their shoes. However, I was having a look at the Test averages. He's on par. So on par, I mean within 2 runs, or has a better average than every single one of these English bats coming out, not named Joe Root. And the bloke bats at 7 and has never made a Test 100. So hate as much as you want on Tim Payne. I don't know if they've got the batting stocks to back it up.
Yeah. So if you're the Barmy Army, you can suck on that bulging disc.
That's pretty good out of you there, Sean. That's pretty good. Pretty good. And look, the English media hasn't been kind to this announcement either. They sort of said, "Good luck, boys." I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Obviously, we haven't played any Test cricket this year. The last time we played was that whacking at the Gabba. Washington Sundar says hello, and we should win this series comfortably. We should. I just am concerned about the lack of red ball cricket. The next 8 weeks, and that will lead us into our next segment, we will see a fair bit of Shield cricket, and we've already seen the start of our domestic tournaments back here. And we've got to kick us off with Travis Head.
Sorry, just before we do that.
Oh, yeah, you go. Yep.
Yeah. So just have a look a little bit on the English team. So Moeen Ali has retired from international Test cricket.
I did read. Yeah, I did read that.
Yeah. So that's why he's not in the squad. And then
big omission, like Moeen.
He's 34, so he's getting up there. But yeah, it's still he probably had a good couple of years left.
Yeah,
interesting. He does it before the Ashes and not after, but that's probably just goes to show where he's at the moment.
And look, Moeen Ali, a pretty handy red ball cricketer, but let's be honest, an excellent white ball cricketer. I imagine that he, has maybe made a financial decision here and might finish out his late 30s cruising around the T20 comps in the world, making a bit of coin. You can't bash a guy for doing that.
Yeah, and there is a World Cup coming up, so he'd probably focus on that than trying to get red ball games under his belt. So.
True.
That is big, Moeen Ali. And that was a couple of weeks ago, I think. We might have brushed over that.
Yeah. And then on Ben Stokes, there was pictures of him floating around on social media that he was gripping onto a bat for the first time since, April? Yeah. He got injured. So whether he might be a late call-up to the squad, if he's feeling up to it, maybe that will bolster the team a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of the noise around Ben Stokes obviously being the mental health issues. Did have that niggling hand injury, but going back 4 or 5 months, you wouldn't think it's the hand that's keeping him out. It might be between the ears. So wishing him all the best with his recovery. It's one of those things, isn't it? Do you want England to come out here sort of half-assed and beat them, or would you, as an Australian fan, would you rather them come out full strength and then they don't have the caveat of, we didn't have Stokes, we didn't have Archer, and try and beat them full strength? I tell you what, the way that Australian cricket's been of late, I'd care. They could send out a English county team with no Joe Root and no good players, and we pump them 5-0, and that'd still get me erect.
Exactly. Who cares? Fuck them.
We need to win just as much as they do, really. In other circumstances, in yesteryear, perhaps, under a Steve Waugh or under a Ricky Ponting, where we hadn't lost a game for 2 years. Oh yeah, fuck it, we want to beat the best of the best. Right now, just send out an English Park team and we'll terrorise them and hopefully get the win. Yeah. But yeah, a little bit of an underwhelming side to go out, but also there's no pressure on them. There's no pressure on these guys, whereas all the expectation will be on the Australian team to get that Ashes win. So, look, I'm looking forward to it. We're only a couple months away. That will lead us into our domestic season, which is back underway here down under. And Travis Head made a statement this week, 230 runs off 127 balls, if you don't mind, to get SA to a whopping 8 for 391 in their Marsh Cup game, just the second Marsh Cup game of the year so far. He also, we spoke about it last week, made that big 100 in Shield cricket. That number 5 Ashes spot might be his. We do have a little bit of cricket to come. Jake Weatherald also chipped in with 97. Queensland, in reply, did well to get to 312, but obviously the Redbacks getting the win there, and that was their first win in any form of the game for nearly 2 years. So I hope the South Australians down there in their lockdown state and pubs open celebrated with a few West Ends or Coopers.
Definitely. And that leads to some Shield cricket, of course, coming up. We've got South Australia taking on Queensland and Western Australia taking on Tassie. Vic may play New South Wales. Of course, both states still semi-infected. Well, Victoria heavily infected with COVID. New South Wales starting to come out. We're easing restrictions. Not, we'll call it a soft release from lockdown, not a full one yet. But I think there's some pretty sad news, Peps, for one of the young potential hopefuls for Australia.
Yeah, Will Pucosky we're talking about here. The bloke can't catch a break. He's had shoulder surgery after dislocating his shoulder playing for Australia last summer, and it's well publicised his ongoing issues with concussion. We were talking pre-show that he might have suffered as many as 10 concussions already at the tender age of 23. He got struck in the neck last week and is still showing some symptoms there. So we'll have to keep an eye on Will Pucosky, obviously one of the most touted talents to come out of Australia in a long, long time. Also been through, a time away from the game via mental health. So wishing Will all the best with his recovery. We do talk about it here on the Esky. It does tend to revolve around contact sports, but it is good to be aware that concussion can be an issue in cricket as well. So just wishing him all the best with his recovery. If he's unavailable, then you can imagine the hoopla that'll come around, who will open the batting with Davey Warner. There'll be a lot of guys competing for that spot.
Sean Marsh.
I think it will. I think it might be Sean Marsh. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but he's having a nice little start to his domestic season here. But look, boys, we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. We've got 2 months. There's a lot of Shield cricket, a bit of Marsh Cup to be played before that first ball gets bowled in December.
Well, wishing Will all the best, of course.
Of course, yeah, of course. And I'm hoping that this is a bit of a media beat up and a bit more of a story than him actually having, some symptoms that might keep him out of the first test. So wishing Will all the best there. In other news, the WBBL kicks off tonight. The Aussie girls just got a series win over India. Shout out to Edges and Sledges podcast. I've chatted with DJ before from that podcast in the Delhi Capitals watch parties. They're calling for a women's IPL. We obviously have the women's Big Bash here, as essentially all Australian talent. If there was a way to bring all the world talent together in chicks cricket and get them on the biggest stage playing for their clubs and playing for a club and not their country, might be a good way to sort of bring exposure to the women's game and possibly a few dollars to the girls as well. So shout out to the Edges and Sledges. I think that's a brilliant idea.
I agree, definitely.
Yeah.
Can second that. And with that, I think that's cricket for this week. A lot of interesting news, which means we need to talk about the NRL and then the AFL. Not a huge amount of news from both sports, of course, being off-season, but we'll run through it. We've got to talk, of course, about the NRL. 2 really big stories. One a bit sad, one very interesting, and we'll start there. The Dolphins, formerly known as the Redcliffe Dolphins, now known as the Dolphins.
The Dolphins.
To be the 17th team in the NRL. They have won that race. Got that license. So Albo came out and announced that was the case. and also finished off that speech that 17's one step to 18. So they've already looking for that 18th team, the second expansion team, which by all accounts is probably going to be New Zealand, but we'll probably have to wait till the international game spreads out and international travel. But they've already started off quickly. The 17th team, they've come in, and I think all three teams honestly had the same game plan. Let's sign Wayne Bennett as the inaugural head coach. And by all accounts, he'll be offered a 3 to 4 year deal, somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million in total. I think that was if it was a $3 million deal, probably a little bit more if it's 4. But essentially, they're going to negotiate. It wouldn't surprise me over the weekend. It all gets finalized, and Wayne Bennett's the new head coach of the Redcliffe Dolphins. Well, the Dolphins, sorry. And then they'll start to look to build their team. And Munster, of course, is the first name on everyone's lips because off contract. But they've already started talking about Christian Welch, Kalen Ponga. I think overall, I saw some stat that's 30 plus Queenslanders have all played for the Dolphins. So the Dolphins have a bit of, have definitely had stocks go through there. A lot of guys playing in the NRL now have connections originally to the Dolphins coming from Queensland. So I think perhaps you might have put this point in here. Will they be Melbourne Storm or will they be Gold Coast? Having Wayne Bennett to kick off your team, potentially getting State of Origin Queenslanders in your inaugural 17 definitely helps your chances of being competitive, which is what V'landers wants for the new team to come in, is they want them to be competitive. They want them to win games, show the other Brisbane team up a bit, which of course I think is why Wayne's licking his lips. He's just like, fuck Brisbane, I'm coming back. And we'll see how they go from that. But that's a summary. That's the context. What do you boys think?
Yeah, I think time will tell. I've put in there Melbourne Storm and Gold Coast Titans, good compare and contrast, if you will, for teams, how they went early on. Melbourne Storm obviously coming into the competition in 1998, and they won the comp in 1999 and have been a powerhouse ever since. The Gold Coast Titans, they've been in the NRL for over 10 years now. They've made the finals a couple of times, but have never gone deep and have essentially struggled in terms of membership and, attendance and going deep. So it could go one of either those two ways, the Storm path or the Titans path. The thing is, we're a long way away. So a lot of this question will revolve around, A, do they get Bennett? And B, how well do they recruit? If they're lining up with Cameron Munster, Christian Welch, Kalen Ponga, and 14 bums, they're probably going to be a pretty good side, you'd imagine. So it's going to sort of depend on how well they recruit in this upcoming season. And I like how you said, Sean, that 17 leads to 18. 17 is no good for my OCD. I hate that, a bye game every week. Surely we've got to be building towards 18. A lot of the talk will be around a second New Zealand team. Obviously, the Warriors sacrificing a lot to be playing away from home all this time.
Central Coast Warriors, you mean?
The Central Coast Warriors, that's right. The terrible Warriors playing away from home for 2 years. I think the logical sense or the sensible decision would be to award a second New Zealand team. Whether or not that's based out of Wellington or perhaps the South Island, time will tell. And again, this is all just brainstorming, nothing official just yet. But yeah, good for the NRL. They do have the Dolphins locked in. What's the name going to be, boys? They've been told they can't be Redcliffe. It needs to be something Brisbane related. Or do they become, say, the Sunshine Coast Dolphins? Or I've also heard Moreton Bay Dolphins thrown in. Sean, have you heard anything?
Yeah, I think for the interim, they're going with the Dolphins.
The Dolphins.
The Dolphins, and they're going to I think there was talk in their original proposal they put forward that they'd run a competition of some description, crowdsource it. So we could end up with, Dolphin Face as a potential team name.
Hopefully it's contractually binding as well. Whoever wins the vote gets the name.
So So they might run something like that, and they'll see where that goes. If it's not North Brisbane or Brisbane, maybe they stick with the Dolphins. But I don't think there's no club in the NRL currently that's just known by and monkeyer and doesn't have a city related to it or a location. So
yeah, moniker, I think, is the word that you're after there. Monkeyer is the bloke that's sitting there with their headphones.
Sorry.
but you are right.
Yeah.
No one is just the team. So I think they need to have an area attached to them. I think North Brisbane might be a shout. But yeah,
I don't mind North Brisbane.
Time will tell. Yeah, see if they can kind of get a North versus South rivalry going on. And we've spoken about it before on the Esky, but the Brisbane Broncos being pretty ordinary over the last few years is a perfect time to bring in a new franchise from Brisbane. I think if we did this in the powerhouse days of the Broncos, with Bennett and Lockyer back in the day, in the late 90s and early noughties, this team would really struggle. But I reckon there's a lot of fed up Broncos fans that would be happy to jump ship.
Yeah, and don't forget Wayne Bennett adds a huge amount to this. Like we've talked about it. He's the GOAT. He'll be 75 by the end of this contract too, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
that's what I was going to say as well. Do you reckon a Wayne Bennett in his 30s with the Broncos? Well, do you reckon a Wayne Bennett in his early 70s is as good as a Wayne Bennett in his early 30s with the Broncos?
He still got a mistake, and you probably got to remember who was playing in the grand final, James.
That is true.
Yeah, I don't think Bennett lost a touch, and I hate to get too political here, boys, but the leader of the free world in Joe Biden is 79 going on 139. Can barely string a sentence together, and he's the bloke that controls the nukes. So I think Bennett will be fine in his mid 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to see who he brings in more of his assistants, because I think his current assistants are all going to stay at South and essentially take over.
Yeah.
So whether, the Walker brothers, they've been around. The Jets,
there's some chat there.
Play a very interesting style of football, whether they get brought in, because a lot of the other assistants for Wayne are already coaching. Like, you can't talk about Walters. He's already at Brisbane, so can't mention them. So it'd be interesting to see what sort of staff he puts together.
Cameron Smith, I've heard, again, maybe just a bit of, clickbaity stuff, but have heard that they might be after his services.
But look, Billy Slater as well.
Well, he's got that contract with the Maroons, so I don't. Yeah,
probably limits him. But hey, JT's fighting around.
And look, no knock on JT from a bloke that also, can barely talk. Probably not the best getting around in the commentary business just now. Maybe his head is better off in a coaching position, or at least that laugh. That laugh will get the boys up.
Definitely. Yeah. So it'd be, again, interesting to see what happens. Everyone's trying to connect dots. I think someone was talking about Harry Grant, his father and his brother and his uncle all played for the Dolphins. So, well, yeah, exactly. Connect the dots. He's coming back.
Yeah.
Time will tell. We've got another year to follow off. Well, it wouldn't be off season, but we've got to follow signings, movements, etc., and see what happens. See what kind of team they put together. It'll be quite interesting whether they put together some elite team. Got the cash to splash on the beach. We'll see how that all goes and gets put together.
Looking forward to it. In a little bit sadder news, but it's always good to celebrate the life of a legend. We heard today of the passing of Norm Provan, an immortal, the man known as Sticks. He passed away today, aged 89. He's actually the man on the Provan Summons trophy, obviously the trophy that gets given to the winners of the NRL. 265 games for the Dragons, playing second row. Back in the 50s and 60s, he won 10 premierships in that 11 in a row golden era for the Dragons, a record which, nowadays with salary caps, that's unlikely to ever be beaten. He was also the captain coach in 4 of those games. He also played 19 games for New South Wales and 14 games for Australia. Vale Norm Provan, and our thoughts go to his family and friends. but also, just a shout out to one of the greatest to ever play this game.
Yeah, and joins a couple of other legends, and Redongas and Bozo also passing away earlier in the year. So it's been a bit of a rough year for rugby league legends. But as Peps mentioned, that trophy, he immortalizes it. What do the Panthers boys do to this trophy?
The question is probably what haven't they done to the trophy?
Yeah, apparently it's, I don't know, it got dropped or it got damaged in some way. The Penny boys have been celebrating, and as they should, obviously bringing the Panthers their first premiership in 18 years. But they broke the trophy. One of you sent an article in the group chat saying it might cost $300,000 to fix. I don't know who's quoting that one up. That sounds like a bloody dodgy builder to me. But I did see some good jokes getting thrown around in the comments as well. And shout out to any of our listeners from Western Sydney. I hope you don't take offence, but some of these were pretty funny. The main one being, look, they're just a bunch of Westies probably trying to strip the copper off it to make a few bucks. I found that quite hilarious, considering Nathan Cleary's probably on about $1 million a year. Stripping copper. More renowned with methamphetamine, heroin type to make a few bucks to feed their habit. Don't know how much you would have got off that trophy. I think Laurie Daly famously dropped the trophy back in the day. You can see how it would happen, a few drinks after an NRL premiership. Maybe the boys, after a certain amount of schooners, shouldn't be given the trophy to handle. But look, it was a bit of a story in the mainstream media. Apparently, Brandy Alexander wasn't happy with the behaviour. Yada yada yada. I don't know. Yeah, I reckon you win a GF. Oh, look, you chip the trophy, get a bit of super glue out, and she'll be right.
Yeah, it's interesting as well that it's the same trophy that gets passed around year on year.
Yeah.
There's no new trophy, that gets made. I think they probably have replicas for the club to put up in their location, but this is the actual one. Interesting note: it's been the trophy since '98 in this incarnation. So, maybe it's potential like they revamp it as well. They've got currently it's covered going up the sides with shields now, with the 20+ grand final notes on it. Maybe they've used the gladiator picture and that statue for 40+ years. Keep that, but do you then tweak it around it? Because originally it was on a basic stand, and then they put it in the I don't know what would you call it, the not cauldron, but the apron thing that got wrapped around it now.
Yeah.
So
they might take a page out of the F1 book and put a halo around their head to protect their heads for when a team on day 6 of their grand final bender drops it the next time. There's a little bit of protection around it.
You never know. It'll be interesting to see whether they just fix it and they keep going with it, or maybe it's potential to like, hey, let's tweak it a little bit, have something new, especially with the 17th team coming in. You're tweaking the rules, new trophy, new league, new trophy. I'll just throw it out there.
Maybe the Proven summons Andrew Johns skateboarding with a hat trophy. I'd get around that.
Oh, too funny. Peppy, that's NRL news. As mentioned, not much to cover besides those two big stories. AFL, on the other hand, they're in their trade period. Finished their trade period, sorry. They finished up last night?
Yeah, I think yesterday. Yep.
So not the most ruckus of trade periods. Not a huge amount went down. A couple big ones, but overall a bit of a slow period. Perhaps you want to run us through the last, say, 4 big names that got the deals done?
Sure thing. I think we covered a few of the big fish last week. Adam Chera going to Carlton, probably the biggest name traded this week. But George Hewitt, the Swans young gun, also got picked up by the Blues as a free agent. So not actually traded, but just signed. So that will see the Blues have a pretty formidable midfield next year, picking up both Chera and Hewitt, and obviously parting ways with Sam Petreski-Seaton. The Swans did add Peter Laddams from Port, their second ruckman behind Scott Lysett. he'll form a pretty handy duo with Tom Hickey, who was one of the signings of this year for the Swannies. And speaking of the Swannies, they do part ways as highly speculated with Jordan Dawson. He finished third in the BNF. All the noise had been around the Adelaide Crows, the mighty Crom, having their eyes on him. We wondered last week, we said Jordan's probably leaving Sydney for sure. What will it cost? It did cost a first-round pick. And that ends the speculation there. There was even talk that he may even leave the Sydney Swans to re-enter the draft. That didn't come to fruition. Jordan Dawson is a Crow. Freo has picked up Jordan Clark from Geelong. They traded pick 22 for him and also added Will Brodie from the Suns. Now, I'm not putting these guys in Adam Cerra's kind of territory just yet, but they obviously need to fill that hole that he leads in their midfield. So hopefully one of those two young guns are able to step in to that hole left by Cerra. And we spoke about it last week. We speculated, but it's official. Pat Lipinski is officially a confirmed earlier in the week. They traded pick 43 for him, which I think is a bit of a steal. It probably shows where the Western Bulldogs are at the moment. They're that strong. Paddy Lipinski can't really break into this midfield, and you'd imagine he would be a staple midfielder at just about any club that's not the Western Bulldogs or Melbourne Demons, perhaps. I'm glad he chucked it in there. Bobby Hill, GWS, a lot of and him going back to Perth. Did this deal end up happening?
No, it didn't. And just want to go back to the previous one with the Bulldogs, just mentioning, leverage, I think was the question there. As you said, they had all the talent. They really didn't have leverage to push that pick, but it was good to see the Pies get Pat over there. So as mentioned, Bobby Hill wanted out of GWS compassionate grounds, wanted to go, was it back west or back to Victoria? Home essentially for him.
Back west, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it ended up GWS. Well, the wording the media uses, GWS refused his trade offer, whether that's clickbait or not, or something didn't happen. But they've turned it down. By all accounts, it seemed like Bobby Hill was a bit distraught with this decision. On the phone crying to the list manager, like, hey, I'm cooked. I don't want to be here, essentially. And they couldn't get something done and kind of forcing his hand. I was just wondering if his situation maybe being more of a young fella, whether he could do something like Dawson was thinking about and go back through the draft and try to go back somewhere out west or somewhere that isn't Sydney. I think that's probably the issue at the moment. But I just wanted to see what your thoughts were, Peppy.
Well, he'll have to make up his mind very quick if that's what he wants to do and leave the Giants and go through the draft again, because we're only a few weeks away from the draft. It's always sad, isn't it, when a bloke is – you do hear about it a fair bit in AFL, the only domestic sport that we have here with a draft system where guys do get a little bit homesick.
And really with trades as well, like the NRL not a huge trade market at all. They don't have windows or anything like that.
Well, and again, that's tied into having a draft system, I suppose, that you can trade players for picks. So look, you think of Bobby Hill, you hope that he's not too homesick, but you also wonder what's going through the Giants management head. Once a player tells you that they've kind of had enough, what's their output going to be like next year? He's a speedster. He's an awesome force when he's on, but definitely one of those momentum type guys. If his heart's not there, will he be contributing too much to the Giants in 2022? I guess time will tell. Yeah,
and not to put it on Bobby at all that this is his thought, but maybe GWS is thinking like, well, he just wants out. He doesn't necessarily, we can turn him around. He'll be right. We'll sort it all out. It's more he just doesn't like the contract or doesn't like where he's at. He's not getting as much playing time, whatever, and he just wants to go somewhere where better club, whatever he wants to sort out. Probably not with GWS, but there's always that thinking that a lot of guys go to the compassionate grounds. There's no real trade holdouts in the AFL to what the NFL is. So it's like I mentioned leverage before. their leverage, as say, is like, hey, start the conversation because I want to be moved on. But who knows?
We'll keep an eye what happens there going forward.
Yep. Yeah, agree.
Let's run us through some NFL news here, Sean. We have to talk about John Gruden. You probably over this more.
Give me a second. Let me just. Yeah, I'm gonna need this.
Oh, that's one for the Raiders fans out there. John Gruden has been sacked. Run us through what happened here. I'm going to duck out very quickly. I'll be back. But a massive, massive story. Former Super Bowl winning coach with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and long-term personality as both an analyst with ESPN and a head coach in the NFL. What has happened to John Gruden, please, Sean?
Yeah, well, so context, he had signed a 10-year deal with the Raiders as head coach. So he was 3 years into that deal. I think he had a 22-30 odd record, so not the greatest record, unfortunately, for him. But it came out probably Saturday.
Yeah, over the weekend.
Yeah, it was over the weekend of a email from 2011, I think was the year. Whether that was leaked initially, who knows? But
it was during the last shutout or whatever it's called with the Players Association, the lockout.
Yeah, exactly. So in reference to that, and then going after the NFLPA's president, Smith, I believe, from memory.
Smith, yeah.
Demarius Smith, essentially calling him a whole bunch of racist names and getting stuck into him. Which, in writing, not a great idea.
Not a great idea.
Yeah, but then Monday, I think it came, well, Monday their time, it came out during the, I think the start of Monday Night Football.
Start or half time?
I think it came out at the start of the match that they had 7 years worth of emails, essentially from 2011 to 2018. They had a whole range of things, and he went after everyone. So he went after media personalities, very much going against the LGBT, I think I got that right, crowd movement, essentially, getting stuck into some of the media personalities about their preferences as well, being a bit misogynist. Then, of course, sexist, getting stuck into the women in league. So everyone was copping it from Gruden in these emails over the span of when he was at ESPN. When he finished up in 2018 and then joined the Raiders, there's nothing really since then. But they found a whole bunch of stuff. New York Times, I think, or New York Post, one of the two New York publications, was going to release it all. So then at halftime, so within an hour and a half of that game happening, Gruden and is it Mike Davis? What's the Raiders owner's name? Because Al's the dad. I can't remember the son. It's something.
It is Davis. I can drag that up.
I'm sure it's Mike Davis.
But he came into the into the facility to meet with John, saying, "Hey, all the shit's coming out. Everything's getting leaked. There's so much. What are we going to do? What are you going to do about it?" And mutually agree. I'm going to resign. Let's start. I don't want to take away from Raiders football. I'm fall on my own sword here. I've been caught with saying things behind closed doors that white guys in power usually do bad things behind closed doors. Just look at history.
Start naming off
no, I'm not naming names. I'm just giving a very generic statement there. But he's been caught out in this regard. Nearly all the emails that they kind of referenced were to Bruce Allen, who was the general manager at the time for the Washington Football Club. And this is kind of where it gets interesting, because the whole point of why they found these things was they were doing the cultural review of the Washington football team after Bruce Allen's and his cultural things there with Dan Snyder and his sexism towards the cheerleaders and his office staff as well, that Roger Goodell actually commissioned this review and said, go through 650,000 emails and find me some dirt. They seems to have found all the dirt on John Gruden and no one else. So I think I think I might have mentioned it, the conspiracy here of the difference between a head coach and $1 billion owner, how they're not going to release anything on the Washington Football Club. It seems to be all sweet by all accounts. Then the report is there's no more news going to come out about any of their emails. So potentially there's been no cultural issues over there, which I think most people can probably agree is bullshit. But it seems like it's been swept on the rug, and the lamb to the slaughter has been John Gruden here. Not saying he's what he said is right or anything. He's definitely shit, but he's the one that's taken all the bullets for this, while the Washington football team gets off quite lightly. The final note that I put here was Scheffner caught a bit of heat as well in this, because I think in that same lockdown, 2011, wrote a story and sent it off to Bruce Allen to actually review and say, change it as you want, make any edits you need on this story, send it back to me, and I'll get it published by ESPN. So essentially, Bruce Allen was his editor, which goes a lot against, say, Scheffner's inside sources and Bruce Allen's, I don't even get myself involved in the media at all. Again, interesting, the backdoor stuff that happens in the NFL. What happens behind closed doors, they try to keep quiet, but it seems like a lot of shit happens, and you put it in writing in emails. Some of the stuff might be found out at Hillary Clinton.
That is what I said earlier. The first email that got released regarding the appearance of one of his players' lips, I thought, oh, here we go, snooze fest. Someone's not, you can't fire a bloke over that. I was much more interested in the emails around Hillary and Bill Clinton from 10 years ago. But it did seem like the more we found out about it, the more and more that John had incriminated himself. Pretty much saying stuff about every minority group that's under the sun. Interesting in that it had started out as an investigation into the higher-ups at the Washington football team. Will we find out more about Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder? I guess we'll have to keep an eye on it. But something that was quite interesting, I thought, was Tampa Bay pretty much cutting all ties with John immediately after this, won them their first Super Bowl. It was his first year as the head coach of the club. Look, definitely not condoning any of the behaviour or what's come through in the emails, but it is a weird time that we live in that things will be backdated 20 years, and anything that you may have accomplished in a sporting arena or otherwise can be taken away if you've displayed this kind of behaviour. I'd like to quote Derek Carr, and I imagine his thoughts probably sum up a lot of the players that have played under John Gruden. He said, I love the man, but I hate the sin. By all accounts, an excellent leader, an excellent coach. But look, if you're exhibiting that kind of behaviour, you're not going to last in today's day and age, and nor should you. So, an end of an era there, I guess, with the Raiders and also beforehand with the Bucks. Monks, as a Bucks fan and someone that sort of got interested in them after, that Super Bowl win back in 2002 and when Gruden was the head coach back there, what's your thoughts around this?
Yeah, it is a tough one because, it is very hard, I guess, to separate the man from the coach. I think, I guess, fortunately, in Tampa Bay's favor, that Super Bowl winning team was built by Tony Dungy as well. Gruden did come in that 1 year and did make some changes to the offense and was able to pull together an offense that would help or supplement that defense to win a championship.
Yeah, it really gave them that drive I think they missed under Tony.
Yeah.
I think they needed that passion, and that kind of pushed them over the edge.
Exactly, and you always see the memes and hear the talk about Gruden being Chucky and that evil sort of hard-nosed kind of coach. I guess from Tampa Bay's point of view, they've removed him from the Ring of Honor. Honor probably being the operative word there.
Yeah.
I guess the actions of the men outside of the coach doesn't really reflect, I suppose, the ideals behind that. interesting that you mentioned and quoted Derek Carr before. I was reading during the week that Gruden just finished building his $3 million house out at Las Vegas, and his next door neighbor is Derek Carr. So seems like neither will be moving anywhere anytime soon. I guess it is good to hear that players can still sort of support and help John through, I guess, the next stage of his life and sort of start piecing things together. And I suppose hopefully we're able to see change and forgiveness through all this as well.
Yeah, and it'll be, and you know, coaching staff, they move families to come and join. There's probably going to be a new head coach and a new coaching staff in there. So this doesn't just affect John as well, and it affects the entire Raiders organization. So, they're in a rough patch at the moment. We'll talk about that when we get to the preview of their game. I just want to say back to kind of Pep's and just in your point there, Monkey as well. Like, you can't rewrite history. He'll always be the head coach that won that Super Bowl for Tampa. But as Monk said, he's no longer being honoured for that by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And none of the others will honour him. It's good first move. Tampa Bay might want to go look at Warren Sapp's rap seat because he's in the game as well, and might want to do some double checking there too.
That's it. Well, surprisingly, haven't really heard anything from too many of the ex-players. I think Keyshawn Johnson did come out this week, whether he was jumping on the bandwagon or not. He did mention that he'd always thought of Gruden as a little bit of a fraud or a used car salesman at his time at Tampa Bay as well. So I don't know if that reflects some of the behind the scenes stuff.
Well, I think you
Gruden
said
as a coach through the years. So
yeah, I think post that Super Bowl and post reflection on that many years later, most of those guys realized that, hey, Tony built this team, and like I said, Gruden kind of gave us the kick in the bum we needed to put us over the edge because we were talented enough to win. Like you say, he only spent, I think, 3 years there and then 3 or 4 years and then moved on into his ESPN gig. So, it is what it is. It's happened. We'll talk about the Raiders more in a minute when we get to that game about how that's going to affect them. But that's the biggest story that happened in the NFL this week.
By far.
And probably got maybe some other far-reaching outcomes to come out of that. We'll see. But it's sucks for Vegas and sucks for all those people involved with that organization currently. So on a bit of a lighter note, we got to talk about our boy, the Australian Michael Dixon. Shocking the American population with the double punt, the one-handed pickup. It went a bit viral on Thursday Night Football the day after we did our last podcast. So a bit of old news, but we thought we'd cover it being Australians. To summarize it, he's punting the ball, gets blocked. He's the first one to see it. It hits the ground, bends over, picks it up one-handed, makes a couple moves, realizes that he's not the most elite athlete on the field at that point in time. He's not going to house this thing, not going to take the crib. Let's punt it again, and he punts it again for the second time for a 62-yard gain, I think, was the punt. So, it ended up being flipping the field, put the opposition on the 10-yard line, and everyone's singing his praises for how amazing that was. What were your boys' thoughts on this?
I loved this. This was AFL incarnate. The one-hand pickup and then a little bit of a step, and it was a snap. It wasn't like a legitimate NFL style torpedo punt or the drop punt that we've seen brought in by Australian players. This was a round-the-body snap. There was some conjecture as to was it past the line of scrimmage. It looked very, very close.
I think the rule actually for this is quite interesting because it's different from the NRL's ruling on, say, like a 40-20, where it's foot on ball, because his foot and the ball were past the line of scrimmage.
Well,
but his plant foot and the back half of his body, of course, was behind it.
Yeah.
But I think the rule ends up being any part of your body is behind the line of scrimmage is where they count it from, not the point of the ball. Opposite to what the NRL rule is. But I thought that was quite interesting. And I won't talk about forward passes when we get to the Colts game because that'll piss me off.
It was funny. I can't imagine what motivates people to fight so much online about a ruling like this.
Yeah.
It's for juicy. Yeah, I don't know how much you've got going on in your life if that's what you tend to spend your time on, is arguing over semantics like where his foot was, what is it, past the 21 or 20-yard line or whatever it was. But a really cool thing, obviously made some headlines here in Australia. Michael Dixon, one of the premier punters in the National Football League, and a really silky, spur of the moment kind of thing there with that double pump. But let's move in, boys.
I just want to finish up before you move on there. But I will say, and for any of our American listeners, the one-handed pickup, I think every kid in Australian schools can do that. So it's not something that's out of the ordinary for us, just because of the sports we play and where the ball ends up, which is on the ground quite a lot. Means you got to bend down and pick it up. So yeah,
You mentioned every kid in Australia. Me as a 6'6", not very mobile ruckman.
Except
may be the exception to that one. I struggle picking it up two hands, to be honest. But yeah, definitely. And you see it in the NRL as well. Blokes coming and scooping up from dummy half with one hand. But it was a risky move. They were in their own 20 there, and he nailed it. So yeah, good to see Michael Dixon there, getting a little bit of Aussie exposure on the big stage that is the NFL.
Definitely, Peps. And as you mentioned a second ago, with that, I think we need to preview some games and run through some of the games this week. Thursday Night Football kicks off, of course, with Tampa Bay taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Big news, Gronk's still out with his rib injury. I think they are a bit worried it could be worse than they thought, with cracks to broken ribs, but we'll have to see what happens with Gronk there. He has taken some good shots this year, so they probably don't need him against Philadelphia like they didn't need him last week. So good rest for Gronk. Save him for the back end of the season when you do need him is important. The other bloke, though, that you'd think would start to wear down at some point is Brady, but he's ageless. Another 400-plus yards, 5 touchdowns against a good defense. Leads the league in passing yards, second in touchdowns. Do you think he could get an MVP at 44? I think he probably doesn't want it, because generally the MVP doesn't go on to win the Super Bowl. I think he prefers that 7th ring, but hey, we'll see how it goes. Early days, of course, but he's got excellent talent there. AB's back, killing it, had massive games. Mike Evans, huge target, always going to kill it with the ball. On the flip side, to finish off this wrap-up, Philly did knock off Carolina. Bit of a defensive struggle there, but do you think they stand a chance tomorrow? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no, Tampa Bay for me in this one.
I'll jump in before we pass over to our resident Bucks fan. I'm going to agree with you. I don't see Philadelphia troubling them that much. I suppose we got to think 2 weeks ago where they went up to New England. We didn't think that New England stood a chance in that game, and they played pretty well. They did have the Belichick factor, bloke that coached Tom Brady for 20-odd years. Going back to Brady, he's 44 years old. If there's anyone that was to break this kind of hoodoo, I suppose, on the MVP, to win an MVP and a Super Bowl ring, it would have to be this fucking Twilight vampire motherfucker that just keeps looking younger and younger every year. And just doing ridiculous things for a bloke his age. We compare, we were speaking at length last week about Big Ben and how busted up he looks and how old he looks and how slow he looks and how unathletic he looks. He's 6 years younger than Tom Brady. So let that sink in. Monks, I'll throw it to you. I obviously tipped the Bucks. Can
I just before you do that, cover off a point? So the last MVP to win a Super Bowl was 1999 and Kurt Warner. So
99, Kurt Warner, greatest show on turf. It's quite some time, isn't it? It's quite some time. We've also seen it in the NBA. I think you've got to go quite some time before you see someone win the MVP and a ring as well.
Can you guess the total number of MVPs that have won a Super Bowl?
3?
10.
Oh, well, I was right. There you go. It's easy, mate. 10 people have done it. 10 people have done it. Surely the greatest NFL player of all time can do it when he's 44.
True,
but say, it sounds like it's due.
Yeah. How many Super Bowls have there been? 56 now?
Yeah, so let's call it 1 in 6 chance. But
Exactly.
obviously hasn't happened for 20 odd years.
Mhm.
Two Bucks tips here. Obviously, Monks will tip the Bucks. Your thoughts and the odds, please.
Yeah. I don't want to say it's a bit of a trap game, but it will be interesting to watch. So not only Gronk's out, Levante David is also out. So how that plays into the linebacking core. I guess he will be missed. I do have to eat my words a little bit from a couple of weeks ago. Sherman has been pretty good for us. Has definitely helped our secondary out, which I am very happy for. As you mentioned, obviously I've gone Bucks. They are favourites $1.34. The Eagles are out at $3.27. And we've got total match points of 52.5.
That is a lot of points. We have seen the Eagles being able to put up a few points through the Jalen Hurts run offense. I think something that maybe needs to be spoken about is that Philadelphia defense. They've been a bit hot and cold, but were pretty good last week. They picked off Sam Darnold 3 times. So be interesting to see how they go against Tampa tomorrow. But I agree. I think Tampa wins this game. Should we move through to Sunday, lads?
Yes. Yeah. And we'll start off with the early games, of course. 2 not the greatest games in the world. We've got Miami 1-4 taking on Jacksonville 0-5. That is in London. It's the second game that'll be in London. Interesting enough, they're looking at games in Germany. Nothing official yet, but they're potentially going to be a couple of games in Germany.
That's a few years away as well.
Yeah, a few years away, of course, but they're trying to spread the game, of course, especially into Europe. Maybe re-kick-start a Europe League might be interesting. But I think Pep's put this one here. How good for English fans. They get 2 of the worst teams in football after copying Falcons and Jets last week. That ended up being not too bad of a game. It was close and hard fought. So, but it's we're not talking about the Premier teams here that we think are going to be playing playoffs football come the end of the season.
No, not by any means.
Pep says traded Miles Gaskin. Had a big day in the loss to the Bucks, of course. The Finns, he's looking pretty ordinary. Tua, I think's back training. Don't think he's playing for this, though. I don't think he travelled or will travel for this game. Jags, of course, got smashed by King Henry last week. They're still looking for their first win. Robinson ran the ball well, got almost a $1.50, but also a tutter for him. What are you boys thinking of this? I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think this is Jags' first win of the season. They do play well in London for whatever reason. Urban Meyer's finally got the heat off him. It's all on John Gruden. They're going to come out and win this game against Miami.
I want to say, oh, you bastard, because this was my upset. And I think I sent you boys a meme of Urban Meyer this week. Pretty much him just very thankful that a lot of the media storm is off him. And it was simply a picture of Urban Meyer and the caption being, "Hey, you guys heard about John Gruden?" Obviously, a lot of the pressure comes off him after his, his Gruden grinders last week. Let's put it that way. I agree. I think Jacksonville haven't been that bad. Same to be said about the Detroit Lions, the other 0-5 team. We'll get to them in a second. I imagine that they probably aren't favourites here, but Miami aren't really impressing me by any means. I'll go the Jags. And Monks, if you wouldn't mind your tip and the odds, please.
Yeah, I've gone Jags as well.
Little curso.
Sounds like it. I've even gone so far as to pick up the Jags defense as well against Miami. A bit of a stretch, but
aren't they? They're the worst defense in the they're bottom 3 defense in the league so far, I believe.
Something like that, but Dolphins' offense isn't all that great at the moment.
He's done crazy shit in other weeks and been right, so we'll see.
Very true. They're a far cry from the Saxonville of years past. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll see.
Odds?
Yeah, so Jacksonville are underdogs $2.51. The Dolphins are favourites at $1.53.
Wow.
We've got a total match points of 47.
Sneak on the Jags for fun.
And I like the unders. I like the unders.
Yeah, unders too. Yeah.
Yeah.
From one thrilling game into another thrilling game, the Houston Texans take on the Indianapolis Colts. They're both 1-4. The Texans actually, don't sell them short. They went very close to knocking off the Patriots last week. Davis Mills by far having his most impressive game as a pro. 312 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, not quite enough to get them past the Pats. And boys, how about that Monday night football game? I actually was working the afternoon. I kind of missed a lot of the second half. Seems to be the half not to miss.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch much of this? What happened to the Colts? They had a lead and they ended up going down in overtime.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about how electric Lamar is later, but I think the big issue for Colts is they lost both their corners and had practice squad guys essentially out there playing corner. And then the Ravens got red hot, and you put 2 and 2 together, and I think they were a bit lacking on defense there to finish out the game, unfortunately for them. Besides that, though, they were looking really good because they were healthy, and I think Wentz finally he's over his ankle sprains. He looked pretty good back there. I think they're starting to hit their groove a little bit, especially on offense. Jonathan Taylor looked good. The defense was looking pretty good up until that point, of course, where they just fell apart. And I think their secondary, they just didn't have the depth there to cover off all the guys they had injured and out. I like the Colts in this one. I've picked them for this match because I think Wentz is starting to hit a tear. Mo Alley Cox outside of Pittman's been pretty good for them too. Jonathan Taylor had a massive, I think, 70-yard touchdown. He's looking rock solid. I just think they're a better football team overall currently than Houston is. So I've backed them for this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the Colts get the job done here. Although Houston have been a bit better than people had suggested leading into the season. They are only 1-4. I get that, but they've actually been competitive in most of their games, except for the one against the Buffalo Bills. For the Colts, Michael Pittman has really established himself as wide receiver 1. I think I picked him up in our fantasy league this year, so probably watch him go to shit now that I've done that. The Colts, look, they're 1-4, but this division is not very strong. They're by all means, there's still a definite chance to make the playoffs. It's early days, but they'll want to put games like this away. Amongst your tips and the odds, please.
Yep. I've gone Colts as well. They are pretty heavy favourites at $1.20 here. Texans are out at $4.60 at the moment. I've got total match points of 43.5.
Yeah, interesting there. Quite a low line, but I probably wouldn't be touching that one, to be honest. Look, the Colts will win this, and if they don't, then there's serious questions around them being a playoff team.
Yeah. Next matchup, we've got Green Bay at 4-1 taking on Chicago at 3-2 at the moment, still going along. Packers did get an overtime win and a good game against the Bengals there. Probably not the greatest kicking. Last week wasn't the greatest kicking overall for kickers. I think they missed a total of 11 extra points.
Yeah, I did read that, yeah.
And a bunch of field goals. There was, 5 missed field goals, winning field goals potentially in this between the two teams.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't expect from Crosby, but hey.
Not the greatest kicking, maybe the biggest understatement of this podcast. This was the most shitty-ass kicking I've ever seen in a game of NFL ever. There were 5 game winners on the line. Crosby missed 3 of them, and the Bengals kicker missed 2. I'm a Packers fan, and I've got Mason Crosby in my fantasy team, and I was just watching this, just going, you've got to be shitting me. Some of them, within 40 yards. The bloke had, nailed over 20 in a row from under 40 yards. So, pretty concerning, but they got home with a W. The Packers are 4-1. Aside from that week 1 game where they got absolutely pantsed by the Saints, have looked pretty good. And I tell you else has looked pretty good. Monkey's fantasy team, Devontae Adams, he's on the Monkey Go-Go Rangers. He had 11 catches for 206 yards and a touchdown, and was a big key in Monks putting up 199 point something in his fantasy demolition of my Peps Mongrels this weekend just passed. The Bears, considering their offense is pretty bad, they came off that win against the Raiders, where I think we all tipped the Raiders. This was a little bit of an upset. Justin Fields was but it seems like their Bears. I think the Bears defense, got them through that one. They're 3-2. One of the oldest rivalries in football here. I've obviously gone with my heart, and I've tipped the Packers. What do you boys reckon?
Yeah, I was just in that game as well against the Raiders. It was 29 to finish that game off. They had 35 rushing attempts to only 20 passes. So very much relied on Khalil Herbert and Damian Williams there to get them over the line for rushing. But like you said, defensive battle. Raiders, I think, fading, as you will. So we'll have to see how that goes. Can't go past Green Bay. They're in their mojo at the moment. They've hit their stride. I'm back in the pack.
Back to pack as well. They are favourites $1.44. There's at $2.80 at the moment, and we've got total match points of 44.5. Probably
in
think
Chicago, maybe not.
Yeah.
It's not super cold yet.
Nah, not just yet.
Nah. I'd avoid it for now. Moving on. Kansas City Chiefs, surprisingly 2-3, take on the Washington football team, also 2-3. Chiefs did get embarrassed at home by the red hot Bills. And I think the note here is very poignant. The Chiefs defense is just not where it is of last year, and their offensive line, even though it's a rebuilt offensive line, just doesn't have the chemistry yet, and looking like the banged up offensive line of Super Bowl of yesteryear. So I think they've got the talent. They can definitely pull it back in, but they've got some things to fix up. And what's not going to help them, of course, is getting CEH Edwards-Helaire on injured reserve. I think he's got season done, but 6 weeks from memory.
I don't know if they've got a timeline. It's definitely going to be up to a few weeks. So he's going to be riding the bench for me in fantasy. Left knee MCL sprain.
A couple of months, I'd say. Darrell Williams comes in, and hopefully will have an immediate fantasy impact for anyone out there looking for running back help. Speaking of woeful defenses, though, we've got to go over to Washington football team. They've got an elite front four. Maybe you can throw in the 7, but their secondary has been struggling, and they just not where they used to be. They did lose to the Saints last week. Heineke threw 2 picks. Fitzgerald, I think, still a week away. I don't think he's back for this game. I might double check that while I get your thoughts. I think Kansas. They should be a better overall outfit with the alien that is Patty Mahomes as their quarterback.
Yeah, Chiefs for mine. They are 2-3, but have lost to some pretty good teams. Let's be honest. They've lost to the Bills, they've lost to the Ravens, and they've lost to the Chargers, who all have good winning records. Look, did anyone expect us to be in week 6 or going into week 6 and talking about the Chiefs being 2-3? No, but I still think they're a playoff caliber team with Patty Mahomes at the helm. Losing CEH is not good. I don't think it affects them that badly. They're not a pound the rock kind of team. Anyway, I've gone the Chiefs here, and I think they get their season back on track this weekend.
Yeah, and confirmed Fitzpatrick's week 7, so he's about another week away. They think. Another hop for Heineke. Monks, give us some odds.
Yep. I've gone the Chiefs as well. They are favourites at $1.31. The football team is out at $3.52, and we've got a line of 56.
50. That is high. That is very high.
I think it's too one-sided, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As they're expecting a lot out of the Chiefs to get that number. I don't think they'll have a good enough dance partner in Washington.
No, I don't think the football team's offense is good enough to justify that kind of line. But
they're just hoping and prayer at the moment with Scary Terry. That's really where it is, or Gibson breaking a big one. That's kind of what they're looking at. But hey, the Chiefs defense has been
ordinary, very ordinary.
Yeah, that maybe that's what they're thinking. They'll leak a few points. Minnesota, Carolina up next. 2-3 Minnesota taking on the 3-2 Carolina Panthers. Vikings did escape with a win against Detroit, which we didn't think would be as close. Max, can you let me know how Dalvin Cook's going? But in his stead, Madison, another 113 rush yards, got another 40 receiving and a TD, doing really well in his stead. Panthers dropped 2 in a row now after their hot start. We may have put the curse on them, picking them last week. They threw 3 picks. Chubba Hubba got 24 carries and 100 yards. I think McCaffrey as well is still a little bit away. He's getting very close, though, from all accounts. Marks, do you have an update on Cook? I checked McCaffrey.
Looks like he is. Where are we? He's still limited practice. Haven't really got too many details outside of that.
Okay, getting some limited practice in probably helps. CMC on the other side, he's 50-50. Hopeful to play this week. So interesting there. I've picked the Vikings. Yeah, I kind of flipping this. I think these are 2 teams roughly in the same sort of spot. I don't know. I just like Minnesota maybe a little bit more than where Carolina currently is. See.
I really like that tip, Sean. I've also gone the Vikings. I hope this isn't a curse on the Panthers. And they're very similar in that they're both NFC teams that aren't the best in their division. They're both playing behind really strong teams in the Bucks and the Packers, but definitely will be putting their hands up to clinch that second division spot. And obviously, by that, a very important matchup. Monks, you going to put a curse on, or are you going to go to the Panthers?
No, I'm going to keep this interesting, and I've gone the Panthers. Yeah, no real reason. That being said, they are underdogs. They're currently sitting at $1.99. The Vikings are at $1.82, and we've got total match points of 45.5.
So pretty much a coin flip there.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be betting on a match winner there, but
what was the total match points?
45.5.
Sean's making faces for those listening.
Yes, sorry. I'm considering cogs turning for those listening. That's the one to think about. LA Chargers taking on the Baltimore Ravens, both 4-1. Probably the match of the round, I'd say. At Macca, at Pappy for this. 2 of our good mates, at Esky contributors. Bit of back and forth. We'll see who comes out on top. Will stats matter? This game will tell us. Chargers, of course, coming after a wild shootout. Excellent fourth quarter against the Browns. Finished up 47-42. Herbert was 400 yards-ish for 4 touchdowns. Currently sitting 13 touchdowns, 3 intercepts on the season, with a passing rating, of 104.7. Mike Williams, another excellent game from him. 8 receptions, $160 with 2 tutters. And then Baltimore on the other side, as we mentioned before, had that ridiculous fourth quarter themselves against the Colts, where Lamar just came into his own. He threw for over 400 passes, only had 16 incompletions. 4 touchdowns from him.
He had six incompletions.
Yes, this is what I said. 6 incompletions.
I thought you said 16.
I think you said 16, and I think you also said 400 attempts as well.
400 passing yards. Jeez. My brain said it, my mouth didn't. He did finish up with the highest completion percentage of over 40 passing attempts ever. Peps, do you want to do the SpongeBob meme for us? He's just a quarterback.
The SpongeBob or the Homer Simpson one where he goes, "Look, Marge." All right, where my Lamar haters at? He's just a running back. Look, he is an excellent quarterback. He's an MVP winner. The fact that people still want to shit on this guy is beyond me. He's shown his arm talent in this one. He actually didn't even run the ball effectively in this game at all. I think he had 14 attempts for about 60 yards.
They didn't get their 100 yards, so they tied the record with the Steelers for 43.
That's right. They couldn't go past the Steelers. But he's just a freak. The fact, like, people will just pick anything that they want to be negative about or shit on. And, you know, a lot of hype around Lamar coming in to the NFL draft. Can he do it at an NFL level? He's just got legs. He doesn't have the arm talent. Fuck off. Every single that you know, want to spin that yarn that he's just a running back and that he's got no arm talent. You don't know football and you're irrelevant. So piss off. Looking forward to this game. Two teams that are 4-1, two AFC contenders. This one's a hard one to pick. It's at Baltimore. Oh boy, on the spot. I'm going to go Baltimore just because of the crazy shit that man Lamar Jackson can do.
Yeah, I'm in the Pappers camp. I've gone Chargers. Maybe I think their defense is in a better state currently than the Raiders is, but we'll have to see. I say that they gave up 42 points to the Browns, but
that's right. And you said Raiders as well, I think, Len. So the mind's all over the place, Sean.
I'm sure I said Chargers and
no. In place of Ravens. Anyways,
Ravens.
It'll be better when we're back in the studio and we can really tell in live terms what we are saying. Monks,
one or two beverages doesn't matter. You go.
You have the casting vote here. Yes, Sean. Email me one of those Canadian clubs. I'd love one. You have the deciding tip here. One Baltimore, one Chargers. Who you got?
Yeah. I have gone the Ravens. Lamar. I'm on that bandwagon at the moment. I think it's going to be a real close game. I reckon, watch out for that fourth quarter. There's both Lamar and Herbert are going to be slinging that ball. Ravens are favourites at $1.65. The Chargers are out at $2.25 at the moment. And we've got a total match points of 52.5.
Tie.
I don't mind the overs there at all. What do we see in the Browns-Chargers game? 47-42. Quick maths, that's 89 points. I reckon we see another shootout again this week.
Yeah, I could definitely back that. And 52, yeah, that's not a bad one. Next game, Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Detroit Lions. As mentioned before, Lions are 0-5, Bengals are 3-2. Bengals went so close to knocking off the Pack last week, and they went to overtime. Lamar Chase is looking everything like the stud first-round wide receiver that everyone thought he'd be. I think at the moment he's leading the offensive rookie player of the year. Ahead of all the current quarterbacks. I think he's got 7 touchdowns on the year or something already, 500 plus yards.
I think he got 5 touchdowns.
5? Okay. Yeah. But got a touchdown in this game. 5 on the, I should read our notes. 5 already this year. On the flip side, Detroit, they did have that heartbreaking loss to the Vikings. The second time this year they've been by a late field goal. Interesting little tidbit here. Post game with the Pack, Aaron Rodgers was telling Burrow he needs to slide a bit more. Don't take the hits. Probably take that from a quarterback. He's been in the league 15 plus years. Avoiding punishment is beneficial for longevity. What do you guys think this one? I think Bengals are a team on the ascendancy. I've picked them.
Yeah, I've gone the Bengals too. My heart goes out to Detroit fans. They've obviously lost 2 games by a game-winning field goal, one of them being an NFL record in that loss to the Ravens. And then they've also played some pretty good teams in Green Bay and the 49ers and the Ravens, as we just spoke about, where they weren't embarrassed. But unfortunately for Lions fans, I do think it goes 0-6. And I think Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and co get the win here for the Bengals and will improve to 4-2. It's a testament to Joe Burrow that Aaron Rodgers was saying to him, look, you need to slide. You've got generational talent. We want to see you in this league for a long, long time. So a big shout out to Joe Burrow. That Bengals team is doing a bit more than people had expected this year. So I think they get the win here.
Odds?
Yep. Yeah, I've gone Bengals as well. Like you both mentioned, they're moving in the right direction. Tough to be a long-suffering Lions fan. Bengals are favourites at $1.50 at the moment. The Lions are out at $2.60, and we've got total match points of 47.5.
Probably wouldn't be touching any of that. The final early game this week is the Los Angeles Rams taking on the New York Giants. The Rams got that W last week against the Seahawks, and it was less than convincing considering the Hawks were without Russell Wilson for most of the second half. Bobby Trees finally got a bit of a game. The wide receiver, Robert Woods, he had 12 catches for 150 yards after a bit of a sluggish start to the year. And the Giants, they copped a bit of a beatdown from the Cowboys. However, they did lose Saquon Barkley very early in the game and then Daniel Jones. Monks, if you wouldn't mind, are you ready to go now for an injury update on those two?
Yeah, not just those two. It seems like the whole team's injured at the moment. Yeah, Jones is questionable at the moment. So he would not have practiced today, but they're hopeful that he'll suit up for the game. Barkley seems to be doubtful at the moment. And yeah, besides then, they've got Kenny Galladay's doubtful. Sterling Shepard's questionable.
I think Galladay's, I think in his weeks. I thought I saw 6 weeks for him.
Yeah, potentially. They've also Slayton is questionable as well. So I don't know who they've got at receivers at the moment.
I know. Galladay was 1 to 6. Oh, sorry, 1 to 2 weeks with an injury. He avoided anything major, which was they were worried was going to be the 6 weeks. So very good there.
Yeah.
On the flip side,
the whole offense is banged up. But a shout out to Kadarius Toney, the bloke who I think
everything this week.
Yeah, he did everything. The 22nd overall pick, and in a receiving class, which includes Jamar Chase, who we just spoke about, and also guys like Jalen Waddle, who's been pretty good for the Dolphins. Devonta Smith, obviously the Heisman winner over at Philadelphia. This guy's pretty bloody good himself. He had 10 catches, 189 yards. He looks really shifty. He looks like he can make guys miss. What he needs to get under wraps is the attitude. He got fired up. He got ejected for throwing a punch last week. He might have even got suspended for this game. One of you might need to look that one up.
I think it's usually fine for punching.
So again, he's listed as questionable on the injury report. So he's
related,
dealing with ankle.
I never understood why people throw punches in the NFL when guys have still got their helmet on. You're not going to do too much damage, let's be honest. An interesting one in terms of fantasy relevance is Devontae Booker. He came straight in for Saquon and had immediate impact, ran the ball a lot. I think he had a receiving touchdown. For any fantasy pundits out there that need to pick up a running back, he might be one to look at. Look, we're really thinking of Saquon. I lost him in one of my leagues. Coming back, obviously, off an ACL. It looked pretty nasty. It swelled up like a goose egg, but not always an indication of long-term damage there in the ankle. Let's just hope, maybe he misses this week and then they can strap the fuck out of it and get him back on the field because he was starting to look like old Saquon. Nonetheless, pretty tall order for the Giants to win this. You'd think I've tipped the Rams. I imagine both of you blokes have, just to confirm.
Yep, Rams.
The odds, please, Monks. And, maybe the line might be interesting here.
The line? Yeah. So total match point, head-to-head. Rams are favourites at $1.19. Giants are out at $4.70. Total match points of 48.5. And we've got a line of 9.5.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I probably wouldn't be putting my money there, but I think this is a pretty safe bet head-to-head. I think the Rams take care of business here.
Yep. That ends the early games, and we move into the late games, and probably one of the other really good games coming up. In spite of Cleveland's record, of course, but Arizona 5-0 taking on Cleveland Browns 3-2. Both been very good to start the year. Cards got a scrappy win over the 49ers, though. What did that finish? 17-7, I think, from
17-10, I think.
Yeah, low scoring. Chandler Jones has COVID. Yeah, well, he's got COVID symptoms. He's in the protocol, so he'll be out. But he's had a quiet season so far since week 1. They are the only undefeated team left. Are they the best team? Maybe. We'll debate that in a second. Cleveland, though, they, as mentioned, coming off that shootout with the Chargers with the Bolts, they did have 200-plus rushing yards with Chubb and Hunt both feasting, getting tutters as well. And then Njoku, the tight end for them, David Njoku, he got 7 for $1.50 and a tutter as well. Is he fantasy relevant? I think he's injured. Is actually the answer. I think he ended up on their injury report today from memory.
Someone chase that up, because I've got Robert Tonyan as a Packers fan in fantasy, who's been, I think he's the 32nd best tight end in the league. So essentially the worst tight end,
Nursing knee injury, rest day today. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, coming off all that extra running he was doing on the weekend. Yeah.
Massive game for Njoku. It's pretty disappointing when you put up 42 points and lose, especially how highly touted that Cleveland Browns defense had been leading into that one. Maybe that's testament to how good the Chargers are on the offensive side of the ball. Well, you asked the question just before, Sean, Arizona the best team in football? The record suggests yes. I'm going to say no. They're definitely in the conversation. From what I saw by the Bills on the weekend, to go out there in prime time and smack down, two-time Super Bowl team in the Kansas City Chiefs. I reckon the Bills are the best team in football right now, but Arizona's definitely in the conversation. And I tell you what, if they win this game and go 6-0, then it might be a different story next week.
Definitely. I think Cards, their issues at the moment, they got a few niggles. Murray's got the shoulder injury, niggle, and Hopkins as well. Their defensive line, I thought, would have got a bit more pressure on Trey Lance last week as well. I think I said 7 sacks and 2 intercepts. They got 2 sacks and 1 intercept. Less than half than what I thought it'd be. As mentioned, Jones has been a bit quiet as well. Maybe a bit. I don't think he's just disgruntled, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what's going on there. Of course, with his contract. I've picked the Cards because I'm sticking strong with the Cards as my fantasy team's riding on them, and I've been backing them all season. But I think this is going to be an excellent game of footy. Do I smash the overs though? I'm tending to think no. I think the overs might be quite high for this, but I think with the mentions to the injuries, that mentioned before to Murray, they might be a little down on firepower, and the way the Browns like to pound the ball might run the clock a little bit, so there's less attempts. If it's 55, I don't think it's going to make it. That's my thoughts.
Monks will let us know in just a sec. I'm going Cleveland Browns. I think they give the Cards their first L of the year, although this should be an entertaining game. Monks, you got the deciding pick and the odds, and obviously the unders overs will be very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yes, this is a real telling game as to whether Cardinals are legit and will go all the way or go very deep this season. I have gone the Browns though. They are favourites $1.56. Cards are out at $2.43 at the moment.
$1.56 for a team that's 3-2 playing an undefeated team. Wow, that is no value there. Take out tips with a grain of salt. I won't be putting any money on them at $1.56.
No, it's a very hard one to put any money on. We have a total match points of 49.5. So does that change your opinion, Sean?
Yes. as in that becomes tempting. So the bookies know
Exactly.
55's too high, 49's tempting. So it was like, yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Because they're both high-powered offenses. One of them scored 42 points last week and lost, and the other scored 17 points and won. So that's what makes it hard, the unders-overs betting. But I tend to hope for, in terms of entertainment value, a high-scoring shootout here.
Definitely.
So the next match is Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Denver Broncos in Denver. As mentioned at the head, there's been a rough week for the Raiders, of course. Did have that disappointing home loss to the Bears. They did get Josh Jacobs back. I think they got Peyton Barber back as well this week, but I think Jacobs takes the load for them. Denver, on the flip side, played pretty poorly against the Steelers for 3 quarters. Seemed to get a bit hot in the fourth. Made it interesting. Could possibly have tied that game to force it into overtime, but just couldn't get it over the line. Wheel tip Broncos last week. Did we put a curse on them? Maybe.
Yeah.
I think, from my opinion, I think they game planned poorly for this. I said it last week. You got to stop the run, force Roethlisberger to throw deep. They couldn't stop the run, and when Roethlisberger wanted to throw deep, they broke coverage. So I was like, well, fuck, that's not the game plan. That's the opposite of what you want to be doing. Offense struggling a little bit, and surprisingly how important I say Judy and Hamler were to that. They're the speed receivers. They've added John Brown, probably for that speed guy there to maybe help take the top of the offenses off, to help Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick, who both got pretty hot in that fourth quarter as well. I think both went over 100 yards in that game. What do I think in this? Raiders coming to town after their week. Broncos honouring, I believe, Mike Shanahan at halftime as well. Perth 3-2. Raiders seem to be fading, I think, more than Denver have been. Denver are banged up, though. Firing your head coach gives you usually one win straight away. Not really a firing. Those are, I'm doing the math here in my head.
Are you going to do it against your own team?
I can't pick Broncos. I can't say pick the Raiders against Broncos because we fucking hate the Raiders. Like, that's great. So I've got to pick the Broncos at this. But this should be a closer game of football. I'm worried though, Raiders coming in, they're still together. They'll either come in and be red hot, and then the rest of the next 2 months will be shithouse for the Raiders. They probably won't win a game after this. This is their big game. But the flip side of that, they might come in as an absolute shit show with what everything's happened. So it's be interesting. It'll probably reflect what the Raiders season is going to be going forward, how they play this game. But I've got to stay strong in this one. Denver need to get a win. They can't go the next 2 months, as I've been fearing, where they'll end up 3-8, and I was like, oh fuck me. So we'll see how it goes. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, it is a tough upcoming schedule for the Broncos. We'll get stuck into that maybe next week. But in terms of this week, I think at Mile High, given what's gone on with the Raiders this year and all the media noise around the firing of John Gruden, I think the Broncos get it done here. Although I'm not super, super confident. Obviously, they got off to that red-hot start going 3-0. But we did speak about it. It was against teams that hadn't won a game. And the last few weeks, seems they've kind of been a little bit found out in losses to the Steelers and the Ravens. But, yeah, I've gone Denver here to get things back on track.
Another point on this, Fangio may be a bit on the hot seat, lose this game. They're going to start talking for his head. We'll see how that goes.
Do you reckon? I feel like that's so harsh. 3-3, it's like they weren't touted to be Super Bowl contenders or anything. They're above the Kansas City Chiefs.
True, but his main addition to the team is meant to be defense, and after the poor game plan last week, what's he adding? There's definitely concerns there of the coaching limitations potentially game plan wise in the last couple of weeks. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. He was on the hot seat going in. He needed a good start, so he got that. But he needs, like I said, we need to win a couple of games over the next couple, next 6 weeks essentially. But we've got a hard schedule coming up.
Amongst your tips and odds, please.
Yeah, I can't say we hate the Raiders, but yeah, I think this is a good matchup for Denver. Darren Waller, at least from a fantasy perspective, in terms of performance, is still questionable. So whether or not he suits up, and how that works into Raiders' favor. Yeah, exactly. To that, back to the Broncos, they are favourites at $1.54 at Mile High. Raiders are out at $2.50 at the moment, and we have a line of 44.5.
Yeah, I probably won't be putting money on that one. It's still a bit too close to call, I think. Moving forward into the last of the late games, the Dallas Cowboys, they're 4-1. They take on the New England Patriots 2-3. The Pats just snuck away with that win at the Texans. Monksy, if you wouldn't mind just checking Damian Harris. I think he's out for this and possibly for the near future. We spoke at length about Ramondre Stevenson in the preseason. He seems to be the guy that will be touted to get the rock for the New England Patriots. Have you got any news on him?
Just bringing that up now.
Why Monk's done stat? The Cowboys, of course, have got 4 wins on the trot. Of course, had their opening loss to the Bucks, but have won 4 straight since then. Question here: do they have the second best running back duo behind Chubb and Hunt? Probably answers yes. They're not one. I think Chubb and Hunt are just a bit more electric as runners than Zeke and Tony are currently. But hey, they're definitely putting themselves in that conversation, and they've really been helping out Dallas. Not requiring Dak to throw the ball 50 plus times helps them out. But they have the weapons. They have the receiving core if they need to. They've got 2 tight ends. They've got 3 good receivers. If CeeDee Lamb's having a quiet day, then you're feasting elsewhere. Yeah.
What about Dalton Schultz? He's had an absolute breakout year. I think you've got him, don't you, Sean, in fantasy?
Let's hope he continues it this week.
There might be a guy who's riding a Packers tight end that might be after his services in fantasy football, but I'll get to you after the show about that. What did you find out about Damian Harris?
Yeah, so didn't practice today, Wednesday US, and yeah, still just listed as questionable at the moment.
Yeah, I think from all things that I've heard is that Damian Harris will not suit up this weekend. So be wary, fantasy owners there. Boys, all Cowboys here, they're looking pretty good. That offense is pretty high-powered.
Even going into New England, Dallas for mine.
Yep.
Yeah. Obviously from a fantasy perspective, having Dak as my quarterback, a little bit worried going up against the Bill Belichick defense. But I still going Cowboys here. They are favorites at $1.53. The Patriots are out at $2.52 at the moment. We have total match points of 51.5.
Quite high. I think I'd be leaving that alone. Don't mind Dallas get the win there. I think I've got a slab of beer. Shout out to Sam Jeffrey if you're listening. I took the Dallas Cowboys to take out the NFC East at the start of the year. He took anyone other, and it seems like Dallas is trending in the right direction over anyone other. Sunday night football, boys. We've got
curse, but anyway,
it does. There's a lot of football to go. And shout out to Philadelphia Eagles. They're looking pretty good in the NFC East. Let's get into Sunday night football. It's the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. The massive story out of Seattle. Russ, he's going to be missing maybe 4 to 6 weeks. He's had to have surgery on his third finger on the throwing hand. It's a melt finger. It's actually something that I've had done before. We'll bring that one right there for our listeners that are watching. Yeah, that's what my knuckle looks like now. Bit of a ski jump on that one. So essentially broke his finger at that joint, and the tendon starts to roll back. So if you don't get that operated on pretty soon, you end up with a deficient finger with a lifelong deformity. So that's why they had to do the surgery there on Danger Russ Wilson. Geno Smith goes in for them. He didn't look too bad. A bit of an unfortunate intercept right at the end of the game where Tyler Lockett slipped over and Geno.
His leg's taken out. So I think there's a bit of missed PI there, actually.
You reckon?
Yeah, if you rewatch it back, the linebacker backing up runs straight back into him.
Okay.
And knocks his legs together so he falls over. So yeah, bit of an unlucky one there for old Tyler, because I think everyone was piling it on him. Why'd you fall down? And you rewatch it back, yeah, he gets his legs caught up on the linebacker dropping into a zone. So anyway,
I remember texting you boys. I pulled the trigger prematurely. I said, "Oh, here we go. Here's good old Geno Smith throwing it into no receiver in the area." And then I watched a replay and I thought, "Oh, actually, Tyler lost his feet here." I thought it was just Geno dishing it up for the opposition. The question I had to ask you, lads, and it's early days. They're only 2-3, but they're in arguably the best division in football, and they've got a very tough schedule coming up, Monks, if you wouldn't mind looking that one up. Is this the Seahawks done for the year? It's early, but it could be true.
Yeah, well, if they go 0-6 in that span, yes, their season's done.
Yeah, 0-6, you'd think they'd have no chance. You'd be hoping for like a 2-4 without Russ and then see what he can do later on in the year. I think they've got the NFC North as their division that they play against. So they'll have games against the Packers, against the Vikings, against the Bears, who will all be tough. You'd imagine they can maybe sneak a win with Geno against the Lions if that's what happens. But Monks, have you got the schedule, the upcoming schedule for the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So obviously Steelers this week, and then after that they've got the Saints at home, and then the Jaguars at home. Then they go over to Green Bay, and then they've got the Cards at home after that. And then
Jags is the only one you're kind of thinking that hey, they're going to get that. So that's 1 out of 4. So it's
Jags at home is the only one where you kind of would think that's a tick. So tough ask here for Seattle fans.
And if they were 3-6 at that point, yeah, you'd be really worried. That's you're asking a lot from Russ, who their offense is clicking a little bit, but their defense just hasn't been there.
No, they've been
bad. They're not as good as they have been in the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm not liking their chances. We'll talk about this game, though. Steelers on the other side, they did win against the Broncos, as mentioned before. They do lose Juju. He dislocated his shoulder. I think he's got to have surgery, and his season's probably done from all accounts. But they, the demise of Ben Roethlisberger, he can't throw deep balls. He kind of proved you can get a few off when needed. So if they can get some protection on him, use that play action game, run the ball. They've got some ability there. Maybe they get that against Seattle or Geno. I have to double check because I think it's a coin toss, but I've picked Steelers.
Yeah, I want to go Pittsburgh here too. I think that home field advantage at Heinz Field with no Russell Wilson, I think that's 2 deciding factors for mine. This will be an interesting matchup here on Sunday Night Football. But yeah, I've gone the Steelers with old man Big Ben.
Yeah. Last game then. Sorry.
Oh.
I had to do it at least once. Fuck Muggy.
That's it. It's been a few weeks. We were due one.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. Steelers at home. I think yes, I've gone them as well. They are favourites at $1.41. Seahawks are out at $2.92. total match points of 42
right.
and a half.
I don't like any of that.
Very low unders overs there. But yeah, quite short. I thought the Steelers there, but we'll find out prime time Sunday night.
That's the other thing, like you said, that home field advantage must play into that a fair bit.
So to finish up, as I started off before, Monday Night Football, we got Bills 4-1 taking on the Tennessee Titans 3-2. As mentioned, King Henry is continuing. Monks, can you get his total rush yards? I think we're really good. His post-contact yards have also been elite. I think he's 4th in the NFL. On the flip side, he runs into the Bills team that have been playing really good D, possibly the best defensive team in football at the moment. They did make a mockery of Kansas City last week. Dallas Knox has been a thing, catching touchdown passes, as we learnt this week. He didn't catch a touchdown pass in college. So he started off real hot. Josh Allen back in MVP talk. Only 15 completions this, but did ended up being 300 plus yards, 3 touchdowns. What do we think of this? Bills keep motoring for mine. I think Tennessee, without any receivers at the moment, have kind of been struggling, overly reliant on Henry, and he's going to be facing 8-9 man boxes for this one, I think. So I'm going to back the Bills from me.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. I think the Bills get the job done here. In my fantasy league, I've got the Bills defense. One of the only good decisions I made in our NFL draft. And I thought, geez, they're going up against Kansas City. I might stream a defense. I brought in the Packers. The Pack, I think, had 9 points, and that was against the Bengals. And the Bills had 20 points against Patrick Mahomes and their offense. So their D is playing lights out.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. They've been really, really, really good.
Bills for mine. Monks, I imagine possibly the same way.
Did you get the Henry rushing yards?
Yeah, the Henry rushing yards, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So obviously he is leading the stats at the moment. He's rushed for 2,000 K. No, I'm just kidding. He's rushed for 640. That's almost a game ahead of Nick Chubb sitting at. Well, that is a game ahead of Nick Chubb sitting at 523 at the moment. So he's rushing for average 128 yards a game.
So quick math on the season is 2,176 if he maintains that average.
Yeah, he's got that extra game this year. I don't think anyone's ever had 3 seasons in a row with 2,000, and Derek is looking at that.
Yeah, right. Also, side note there, Lamar Jackson is ranked 8. He's sitting at 341 yards rushing.
He's just a running back.
Finish off stuff for the odds, Mark.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I've gone Bills. Their favourites $1.40. Times are out at $2.97 at the moment. We've got total match points of 54.5.
That is high scoring.
Yeah.
I'll be leaving that alone, but I reckon the Bills get the job done here, boys.
Yep.
To finish us off, buys Falcons, Saints, 49ers, and Jets have buys. 49ers, Kittle on IR. That's a big one. Kamara, I think, got a few niggles. The Falcons are going to Falcons. The only interesting thing about them is Patterson at this point. So we'll see how he goes fantasy relevance going forward.
Yeah.
Speaking of fantasy, shout out to the man over there with the headphones on, the caterpillar above his top lip. He absolutely pulled my pants down and gave me a good old bumming last week. He beat me by 100 points in our fantasy league, and one of your players is Cordero Patterson. You decided to start him this week, and that was a good decision. He did.
So Peps, who's the best running back at the Falcons?
Still Mike Davis. I think I'm going to still hold on to that. I actually put him. I could see where you had Patterson lined up, so I put him right in the exact same slot. See how that would match up, and it turns out Patterson scored more points than Mike Davis.
Yeah.
But I think it's got to even out. It's still early days. But
it's still early days.
Shout out to your team. You put up nearly 200 points in PPR fantasy football. Very impressive.
That's it. Yeah. If I had played one defense instead of the other, I would have just gone over that 200. But yeah, with Falcons and Saints both on buys, with obviously Patterson and Kamara on my team, I'm essentially having a buy this week as well. So that's an easy win for you, Sean.
You have CEH. So who are your running backs this week?
Yeah. I have got Ronald Jones.
Oh, Rojo.
Yeah.
He's essentially been benched most of the rest of the season.
Pretty much. And
you guys talk about Bernard. Actually, Bernard's been really good for Tampa Bay. He's their pass catching back coming in.
Yeah, but is he a fantasy viable running back too? I doubt it.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
I'm just saying he's been a good addition to Tampa.
Sure,
essentially taking Jones' job.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I've got Naheem Hines as my other running back at the moment.
There's
I think I need to
running backs this week.
Yeah.
And you play Sean.
Yep.
Jeez,
you're 1 week too early.
Off, didn't I?
Yeah. But yeah, I'll probably be hitting the waiver wire as well, just trying to see if there's any sneaky running backs to pick up in our league.
I've got a few. You sneak into my DMs if you need. I'd be more than happy to help you beat our co-host Sean.
Anyway, I think with that finishes off NFL chat, and we got to get stuck into the final round.
Ding ding.
I was just trying to check. No, they got nothing recent. Yeah, nothing recent there. I was just checking some stats. Final round. Kick us off boxing to start. There was, I think, as I mentioned in the intro, the massive fight over the weekend with Tyson Fury trying to defend his title against Deontay Wilder. What an epic fight it was for the trilogy. The third fight followed the same sort of game script as the others. Third and fourth round, that's probably all you need to watch. After that, Tyson, more of the same, as I'd like to say, really ascended himself, took Wilder to class and showed his boxing talent and got the win in this. Monks, what were your thoughts on this boxing event?
Yeah, like you said, that third and fourth round was really where the fight was. A lot of excitement was. Wilder was able to get a couple knockdowns on Fury. I think, I can't remember if it was you or Peps, put that video into the chat this week of Fury.
The short right straight, which hits him straight on the temple, and you see the whole power get absorbed through his body and it ripples down his back. Like that punch kills most men. Let's be honest.
I was gonna say that punch kills me.
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit of controversy throughout the week. People saying that Fury got a really, really slow 10 count towards the end of one of the rounds. I can't remember which round it was.
First fight, I think, was the long count right at the end there. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess Tyson Fury finally getting that legit knockout of Wilder, really ending any sort of discussion between those two. And then obviously being the third fight, that's it for this one. Wilder doesn't have any options for a rematch. Real good fight.
Yeah, and out of that third round where Fury knocks down Wilder, and then Wilder knocks down Fury twice in the fourth. Kind of then after that, he gets back up, from the shot that kills most men, as we mentioned. he gets back up and then goes on to take, ascend himself the fifth, sixth, seventh round, just starts wearing him down. By the 10th, I was just like, man, Wilder's done. He's cooked. I can see this is the same point in the second fight, sorry. They threw the towel in. I was like, maybe they should throw the towel in. Probably they should have, because Wilder comes out to that 11th round and Fury was just on him to kill a man, essentially, and a massive right hand hook hits Wilder, and night he goes down like a ton of bricks, and that's all she wrote. So Fury, undisputed, not undisputed. He's what's the was a word they used. He's the not clear line. There's a line thing or whatever. Essentially, he's the number one heavyweight in the world, even though he's got one belt compared to the other three. But with the way the order happens, he's the number one. So he's actually, he's retained. He's still the best heavyweight in the world. And with Joshua losing his belt last week or 2 weeks ago, that fight's probably on hold because he has to rematch Usyk. I believe, I'd assume that's the case. They'll have a rematch clause in there like they did for that match. So Joshua will have to do that first. Or if there's not a mandatory rematch there, then, Fury Usyk, that's what you'd think has got to be the next boxing match on the card for the heavyweights.
All of it's going to come down to the paperwork there, isn't it? Is there a rematch clause for Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk? Time will tell, I suppose, what happens there. A lot of the speculation, will Usyk just get to go straight to Tyson Fury? It will depend on the fine print, I guess. Is there a rematch clause in that one? I'll tell you what I like to see, boys. The baddest motherfucker on the planet, the heavyweight champion of the world, Tyson Fury. Look, let's be honest. He's a bit fat. He carries a few extra kgs, and he likes to party. Did you guys see the aftermath? A few videos coming out of Vegas.
Yeah. Steve Aoki.
Him and Steve Aoki, shirt off, Lancashire kind of chat getting around. It's fun to see, isn't it, that the bloke that is the best heavyweight boxer in the world at the moment also likes to have a bit of a party and a good time.
That's it, yeah. Just real quick back to the fight. So Wilder also broke his hand, whether that was on that punch that we're all talking about at the end of the fourth round or not. But yeah, so he broke his hand, had to get surgery on that. And Joshua triggered his rematch clause against Usyk. So that looks like it's shaping up to be March 22 for that rematch there.
Yeah, I just double checked it. They were saying spring 22, so March, like you say, which means that anything Fury winner of that rematch, Fury related, it's probably going to be there towards the middle to end of next year.
Well, I don't know if that's too certain because a lot of these I'm assuming would be sort of that three-peat sort of match. So if Joshua wins this next fight, I reckon Usyk might be able to exercise his right to a rematch as well. Yeah. So it might be some time before we see Fury fight Joshua.
Which means if that's the case, then there's probably going to be a mandatory defense that Fury has to do for whoever's coming up in his for his belt, essentially his category, who's their number one. So he might have to do that, say, in the middle of next year before we even start talking about this again. So we're going to have to wait another, we've already waited a year. We're going to have to wait another year for Joshua Fury to take place, if it does take place. Otherwise, it's going to be Usyk towards the end there, maybe. But hey, that's boxing news. UFC, I don't want to cover it in super detail, but there's a lot of really good fights being booked. There's, I think, 60 really interesting fights over the next 2 months, or to finish the year out, essentially. Being booked up there. We'll talk about UFC 267 in 2 weeks' time. I think when we get closer to that card, excellent card shaping up there, of course. But the one I wanted to talk about was Masvidal versus Leon Edwards. Finally got booked. Edwards, of course, the receiver of the three-piece and a soda. Bit of bad blood there for a long time. Talk about Edwards is now ducking Masvidal. They've agreed to it. The fight's happening. And I think this is going to be an excellent fight to take in the welterweight division for these two. So I thought that was really good that it's finally being booked. What card is it? I will double check.
I think it's 271.
271, yeah.
A while away just yet, but interesting news. Obviously, that Edwards-Diaz fight was one of the craziest fucking things we've ever seen, where Edwards dominated him for 4 rounds, and then we had Diaz nearly pull off one of the upsets of the century. But that's massive. Masvidal is a killer, and Edwards, we've seen how good he is. Can Masvidal kind of get back to sort of 2018, 2019 Masvidal? That'll be the big question around that one.
Yeah, exactly. UFC 269 is the target for that. That's in September 11th. So,
All right.
but hey, they've essentially they're going camp now. They'll spend their 8 to 12 weeks in camp, and we'll see how we go from that. Looking forward to that. Plus a lot of other really excellent fights that we'll cover as they roll through the calendar. Soccer, I think, is the next major one. I need to take a wee break, so you guys can cover some of that real quick.
You relieve yourself. I'll run us through what happened in the internationals, or the interesting things for us as Aussies at least. The Socceroos, their 11-game win streak, it came to an end on Tuesday night. They lost 2-1 to Japan. I, for one, saw some excellent boomer comments, really, in social media saying, why are we praising this win streak? You know, they only play against oceanic teams. Obviously, we've been in the Asian conference for, I don't know, what, the last 3 World Cups.
Yeah.
I saw some guy saying, we go out there and we beat Micronesia and West Papua, who aren't international teams. So well done to whichever boomer wrote that one.
That's it. Hey, a win's a win, right?
Yeah, well, 11 had been very good, and I think I mentioned a few weeks ago on the Esky, that makes us the best team of all time. So
yeah, well, that's a world record streak.
Yeah, world record. There's no questioning that the Australian Socceroos are much better than the Maradona-led Argentina or the Xavi Fernando Torres-led Spain or any other World Cup winning team. We're the best. But in more serious take of the international World Cup qualifiers, Denmark and Germany are the first teams through that aren't named Qatar. So they're the first 2 teams that have qualified via winning soccer games and not paying off FIFA officials. So well for them. And despite our loss, we're looking okay in Asia. The top 2 of those 2 groups will go through. Speaking of paying off, or big business deals at least, Newcastle United has been purchased by Saudi billionaires, and apparently these blokes have got more money than the guys that bought Manchester City. So watch out for the Magpies. They will have a resurgence up the ladder, you would think, in the coming years, much like that scummy, light, sky blue ship part of Manchester team that is Man City, with all their oil money and no history. Watch out for Newcastle to become one of them, struggling to sell out Champions League games, et cetera, et cetera.
Hopefully, they're currently sitting second last. They could be relegated. Haven't won a game so far this season. 3 draws, their only points. Hopefully these Saudi billionaires will get their return on investment and not get a relegated EPL side. But I think they will probably invest big in this club and get some talent across there in the not too distant future.
Oh, big time. I was looking at a pie graph in terms of owners' wealth. And apparently these Saudi billionaires are worth more than 50% of the total owners. So the other 19 clubs account for less than 50% of these guys' worth. So you'd imagine there'll be some big signings going to Newcastle. Watch out for the newest season of Geordie Shore. I don't know if they still do that. But that's based out of Newcastle. You might see some high-paid soccer players coming out of that one.
Yeah. And with that, there's a couple of the club football, of course, back this weekend. No massive matchups, really. We've got Watford taking on Liverpool. Leicester City versus Man United's probably pretty good. We've got Man City taking on Burnley. Brentford taking on Chelsea. Newcastle taking on the Spurs as the matches for the round to take a bit of interest in. But we will see how that all goes and report back next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. No big, massive clubs playing against each other this weekend. So it'll be a question: can these big clubs knock off people that they're expected to do in the EPL? And I'm really looking forward to the next international break because we're starting to see a bit of a picture in Europe, starting to see a bit of a picture in Asia, and South America is always well contested, so they're a bit far off. But definitely, the European teams, as we saw with Denmark and Germany, and I think the next round we'll see a lot of other teams qualify for the World Cup.
Yep. So from soccer to motorsports, F1, they had the race on the weekend in Turkey, back in Istanbul. It was a pretty good race overall. Was very wet, which made it interesting for tyre strategy. Bottas very much dominated, led from start to finish with that. It wasn't the most action-packed for the front of the race. There was more movement in the middle, but the real talking point was more what Hamilton was going to do to limit the damage from him taking his engine penalty. Our boy Ricardo took an engine 10 place grid penalty as well. Couldn't really do much for him. I think he finished 14th. Another great race for McLaren overall. But I was really talking about Hamilton. Can he limit the damage to Max, where Max is going to finish? They did end up competing pretty closely together. Hamilton was in third with about eight laps to go. Had been on one set of tyres, enters the entire race. And then the conversation, really the biggest talking point was, could he have made it to the end of the race there? Mercedes gave him a little bit of a non-descriptive radio message on you should box now or we'll lose the position to Gasly, not really telling him that you're actually going to go from third to fifth. So he thought he was maintaining his position. So he wasn't real happy when he came back out and realized he'd lost positions. So there's a bit of talking about on the radio back and forth there about his concerns, because he really wanted to let me stick on the inters, let me stay on third, let me try to defend versus chase, because the inters wear out, have a graining period to get them actually going where they work really well. And he struggled. He did maintain fifth position, so he finished fifth. Max, of course, is second. Max takes the championship lead back, so it switches again. But Max, what were your thoughts on that? Do you think he could have made it to the end of the race? Noting, of course, Ocon did do the entire race on one set of tyres.
True. I don't know. So it all actually started almost close to 10 laps before he actually pitted. The team got on the radios and told him that they'd recommend him to pit because Gasly was closing that gap into his pit window, where if Gasly got to that point and Hamilton did pit, then Gasly would get that undercut and get in front of him. Hamilton said no, he reckons his tyres were good enough. And then, about 10 laps later, they advised that it seemed that he was losing pace and he should pit to make sure that he was going to lose those positions anyway, so they might as well put him on fresh tyres just to make sure that nothing bad happened, like he got a flat or something.
They were the assumption he'd lose the positions. I think Hamilton was more thinking hey, I'm a 7-time world champion. Let me defend my current position here. Let them fight through me versus let me try to have to chase them and try to catch up to them. And maybe he limits it and he finishes fourth instead of fifth and he saves 3 or 4 points. Photos afterwards, after the race, his tyres very much had no rubber left on them. They were down to the carcass. So there was always concern that they would fail, blow up.
That's it.
And hey, then he's out of the race. He scores nothing.
Ocon
did do the whole race on one set of tyres. His tyres at the end of the race, of course, looked worse than Hamilton's did. But hey, he managed to make it done. So maybe Hamilton was right or not. But there was, the team conversation was, I think, the most interesting point that came out of this race. From a race that didn't have the greatest action overall. Guys finished roughly where they started. There was a little bit of pit strategy. Middle order was interesting for the talk of the championship. A couple points were switched around. Damage was limited. I think 7 races left for the year. So it's pretty close to getting to the pointy end.
That's it, yeah. And I think to the controversy of Mercedes, it happened the race before. The team told Hamilton to pit. he said, no, I'd rather not. I'd rather stay out. That time he did pit when recommended and ended up winning that race. So I guess, yeah, it's always going to be a little bit of a trade-off. Obviously, you got one person in the car understanding how the car is driving and how it feels, and then a whole team behind the scenes checking and monitoring tire pressure and wear and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's always a fine balance between, I guess, as Hamilton mentioned after the race, going with your gut, and then obviously going with what the data tells you. And then just back on Ocon, so he broke a 24-year, I guess, do you call it record? In that, yeah, no pit stop for a driver.
In a Formula 1 race.
So yeah, it doesn't happen often. I think there was a couple of races somewhere there where in F1 actually said mandated that you weren't allowed to do any tire changes. So they tried that. I can't remember what decade it was. So obviously you've got that whole period of time where there was no pit stops for tires, but at that point you could still pit stop for refueling. So that's a little bit of a caveat on that, where obviously Ocon's no pit stop for tire change. Yeah, so doesn't happen often, but makes for a good race when it does happen. He was able to score points for Alpine in probably what would have been a race where he wouldn't have been able to score points if he had made that pit stop.
Yeah. So with that, F1 moves potentially east, maybe. Depends on what's shorter distance, but they're going to the Americanas. They're going to the United States next, followed by Mexico and Brazil, before they go back to the Middle East to finish the season. So we're really interested to see what the United States race is like, with all the stuff that's happened over there recently, before they then go into Mexico and Brazil. That race is not for another 2 weeks while they move from Europe, Eastern Europe, across to the American continents, as mentioned. So a couple of weeks in between races there.
So it's next weekend's race weekend, so nothing this week.
Sorry. Yes, you are right. Yep. Nothing this week. Following weekend is that race.
That's an age-old dilemma, isn't it? The argument between next weekend and
yeah, well, as we had during the week, I couldn't figure out my own time zones when we were looking at that Delhi Capitals catch up.
Yeah,
it was all for naught in the end, but yeah, doesn't matter. Look, none of us are very good with it. Let's be honest.
That and maths.
Yeah, in your job, you're meant to be good with it, but luckily, you might be moving full-time podcasting one day, so you can give up the quick maths. Let's hope.
So to finish this off, to wrap up the other 3 major sports in America, the NBA is into preseason games. They're a week and a bit away from starting their start of their season. Looks like Ben Simmons is going to stay put and play for the 76ers, at least for now. Pacers were close, reportedly, into making a deal, but nothing's come through, and Simmons is now back at training, getting back involved in the 76ers program. So maybe they're playing nice. We'll have to see.
This is massive, because all the noise this whole off season is that Simmons is getting traded. He doesn't want to be there. We've spoken about it at length, and it seems we're only a week away from the start of the year. He's training with the 76ers, at least for the start of the year. It looks like Aussie Ben will be playing in Philadelphia. So pretty interesting news there. I'll tell you what else is interesting. All this stuff around Kyrie Irving, he doesn't want to get vaccinated. It's not really confirmed what the NBA's policy will be around unvaxxed players, but it seems like for now he won't be eligible. Sean, what have you heard about this?
I think the Nets actually put that on him because they have a biosecurity bubble, whatever they want to call it, for the NBA, where they try to at least protect the players as much as possible. But I think the Nets, trying to protect themselves, have said he's ineligible to come and participate within their practices, and until stuff changes. I'm not sure what that stuff is, whether it means he gets vaccinated or the league changes its policy of how they want to do this season. who knows? Either way, it means our boy Paddy Mills might get some game time. So, yeah, that's quite interesting for us and our perspective.
Yeah, as an Aussie basketball fan, I hope Kyrie continues down this anti-vax, flat earth, tinfoil hat kind of conspiracy path, and Paddy Mills goes out and plays 84 games and kills it for the Nets. But it's an interesting one. He's one of the one of the most talented players in the NBA, and yeah, we'll see what happens there, I guess.
Yeah, I've just had a quick check, and I do remember some of this. It's actually New York City's COVID-19 vaccination mandate policy, which is the issue. Right. So they've kind of sent him home, so he's not in around the team and in the city. But there was also chat potentially he won't play any games in New York this season, so he might only play road games, which would be huge. But if it has to come to that, but at the moment, yeah, the GM for the Nets has stood him down and said, "Go home. We can't. We've got no choice at the moment with the way the New York City policy is. We'll have to work our way through that and try to make a decision." So, yeah. Might be an interesting season for
It's a strange world that we live in, isn't it? That the differences between state law have this much power. We've seen it here in Australia, and it seems to be the same over there in the US. But we'll see what comes to fruition there, I guess.
And to finish this off, to tackle the MLB, the Major League Baseball, Boston Red Sox and the Houston Astros are through to the American League Championship game, and then the Atlanta Braves are through to the National League Championship game on their side. But the Dodgers and Giants are currently tied in a 2-all battle over there for that last place in the National League Championship game. We'll see how that goes and then cover the World Series. And then the NHL kicks off. They had their first opening week of games this week. So it's back and they'll have their long season kickoff as well. So it's all happening sporting-wise in America at the moment. And as always, we will cover it the best we can on the Esky.
Up the Kraken. New team in the NHL, Seattle Kraken, their first year. Great name. Disgusting beverage, I think. If you get stuck in Kraken late night, you will feel it the next day, and the toilet bowl will feel it the next day. Definitely goes out the way that it came in. However, shout out to Seattle getting a NHL franchise. It'll be very interesting to see how they go this year. And Monkey Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they are 2-time defending champs in that one. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, we don't know fucking anything about baseball or hockey, but we do like to keep an eye on it and see what happens.
That's it. Yeah, definitely a few interesting storylines with the NHL this year. So might pay a little bit more attention to it, I guess.
Yes. And with that, boys, thank you. That is on the Esky for this week. Big show in the books. Thank you to everyone listening, to all the lads that are tuning in every week. We do appreciate it. For all those new, please consider subscribing and leaving us a like or comment. We have social media. Check it out. Monks does some good memes and images as well. Thank you to you two boys for coming along and having a good chin wag. Not long now. One more episode, I think, and then we'll all be back in the studio to talk all the dribble. Thank you, boys.
Yeah, looking forward to getting back to it, boys. It's been fun via webcam. It is definitely a different dynamic, but I can't wait to get back into the studio. Might do some COVID non-safe licking of your faces or something like that.
No, that's for the OnlyFans page. Don't.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that one. Sorry. I spoiled the surprise.
Those giraffe legs on OnlyFans, you don't want to see that. We'll take it.
That's where they pay to not see it.
There's a business model right there.
Always a pleasure, boys. Have a good weekend. Can't wait to see the IPL final, the sixth week in the NFL, and follow the world that is sports and dribble.
Excellent.
That's it.
Thank you, boys. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Fuck you, San Diego. I'll see you all later. Yeah.
Bye.